in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It's Tuesday and it's very nearly 3 minutes past 6. I'm Mike Graham and this is the home of common sense, it has to be said. Incredible stuff to tell you about today. So many stories. We were just one day away, remember, from Rachel Reeves' budget, the spring budget statement, which will be made tomorrow around about 12:30 something after the Prime Minister's questions, I believe it is. And it's not going to be good news really for anybody. She's going to take away free school meals, although she denies it. She's going to sack 50,000 civil service workers, although even the civil service unions don't really believe that. She's also going to so-called bring growth to the economy, but I don't believe it. And if you believe it, then I've got some swampland in Florida to tell you, because you must be going completely gaga, barking mad. Even the Bank of England is having a go this morning. Front page of the Times, they're saying basically there's no chance of growth. There hasn't been any growth for about 14 years. They blame the Tories just as much as they blame Labour, but it's certainly not getting any better, that's for sure. According to Andrew Bailey, who's the Bank of England's chief, he says this, basically that there's strong headwinds against growth. The story of growth is, I am afraid, quite clear. It has slowed markedly in the last 15 years or so, and this has affected the balance of living standards. So if the Bank of England's batting against you and you're the Chancellor, then you haven't got much to go on. Bad news again for Rachel Reeves. Following on from the Sabrina Carpenter freebies that she got and was revealed over the weekend, it turns out she's now in hot water over some free theatre tickets, £276 worth of free theatre tickets to the National Theatre here in London. Once again, there's no explanation as to why she decided she wanted to go and see Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest. You know, you make up your own jokes now, don't you? But what is wrong with these people? How do they not think that this will come out, number one? And how do they think it's going to look? MPs, of course, gave themselves another pay rise yesterday, another 2-point-something%, which they say is entirely in line with inflation, so nobody should get too excited about it. We're going to talk about Meghan Markle as well. She's on the front page of The Sun this morning, making a faster buck. Apparently she's opened a shop and she's been accused of exploiting her own children. What a great mother she is. Also, Charlie Rowley's here to help us go through the papers. Very good morning to you, Charlie. Good
morning.
There's an amazing story on the front page of the Times as well about how the Trump team appeared to have sent bombing plans to a journalist by mistake. They were going to bomb the Yemen, and apparently they put this stuff in a WhatsApp group. It's one of those great sort of funny, if it's true stories. I presume it probably is. And also, big news if you run marathons, right? Apparently running marathons destroys your brain, which explains a lot, to be honest, for all those people that come up to you in the summer and say, oh, I'm running the London Marathon, would you mind sponsoring me? Which used to happen to me all the time when I worked at TalkSport, because they all run marathons. And I'm going, no, if I sponsor one of you, I should sponsor all of you. And it'll cost me a fortune, so I'm not doing it. So we get all of that. Record migrant numbers as well, 5,847 for 2025 alone. And also another weird one, according to Angela Rayner's Islamophobia law, it might in fact be Islamophobia to have a go at somebody who's not a Muslim. I don't know how that works, but we'll try and explain it to you after all. 0344 499 1000 is the number. 6 minutes past 6. Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Blimey, look at that. I mean, I didn't even know the music was about to stop. I'm so in tune with this show. That's absolutely fantastic. Charlie, very good morning to you.
Good morning,
Where should we start? I mean, the two stories I haven't mentioned yet. It's the front page of the Daily Mail. Labour to block bid to ban solar panels made by slaves. This is a story that sort of popped up the other day because Ed Miliband had to admit that all the schools that he's putting solar panels on the roofs of and hospitals, they might actually be made in China. And there's a pretty good chance that they're made by slave labour. So I'm thinking maybe they could reshoot the Labour Party's, sort of slogan, just call it slave labour.
Well,
what do you think? I mean, you're a former government advisor.
That's very good.
It's good, isn't it? Slave labour.
Yes, yeah. Well, it's true. And look, you have all Labour MPs and activists up in arms because this is all part of their virtue signaling. Obviously, everybody's anti-slavery, but it is just a fact of life that when you import things, particularly from China, and there's a component that's made in China that go onto these solar panels, then you've got to have a choice of what comes first. Is it the economy? Is it growth? Is it energy efficiency? Because if you start boycotting everything, every little thing, then of course we wouldn't be able to function.
Yeah, but of course it wouldn't matter if they didn't have so much virtue signalling attached to it. Because the whole point of Ed Miliband is, I actually asked a question on Twitter the other day, what is the point of Ed Miliband? Nobody could answer it. But if you're going to be this kind of virtue signalling, everything we do is for the good of the world, we're saving the planet, we're putting these, isn't it brilliant, we're putting these solar panels on the roofs of schools so that they can spend more money in education and all of that. Well, that's all very well, but if you are going to be the virtue signaller, you can't then use slave labour to build whatever it is you're putting on the roof, can you?
Well, exactly, and it's the hypocrisy of the Labour Party, but it's also the challenges of actually, you can say what you want in opposition, and you can, say what you like about all the other parties, but when it actually comes to government, you're faced with hard choices and difficult choices, but you've got to make the right ones that's in the interest of the United Kingdom, this country. That's who they're elected to serve.
And I mean, I'm sure, as you say, a lot of people probably won't care that solar panels are made by slave labour, because most people don't care about solar panels. They don't want them. But if you're going to be made to have them, and you're going to be made to put them on your house, perhaps making them from slave labour isn't the best idea.
Yeah, exactly. And, if you go down this path, and because it tends to be people on the left that have a problem with it, then you wouldn't be shopping at any supermarket, any sort of retail outlet where your clothes are made, where there's still sweatshops that got me
quite sort of sitting up and taking notice this morning. BYD, which is one of these new Chinese car companies, it's a very weird thing, BYD, because it actually means build your dream, which is a very odd name for a car. And I've seen a couple of them driving around in London. But an astonishing story in the FT. Annual sales for BYD's cars, they've only been going a couple of years, have topped $100 billion already. Because they're championing their domestic market and they're selling an awful lot of them overseas as well. And this tells you about how the electric car market has been completely dominated now by China. And of course all these bozos in America who are setting fire to Teslas because they don't like Elon Musk, again, are supposed to be from the left, who are supposed to want to save the planet and who are supposed to want you all to drive an electric car. So now they want you to drive a Chinese electric car made by slave labour.
Yeah, exactly. Which also, and the threat of any kind of thing that's imported from China, the idea of national security breaches, what could be in your batteries, what could be in into the sat nav installation, in your car. Are the Chinese going to be spying us? So you want a boycott of Chinese products on the one hand. You're absolutely right. Then you're burning cars in America because you don't like Tesla, and you don't like Elon Musk. You know, what do you stand for? People on the left would rather us just walk around in flip-flops and corduroys and beards.
It's like the vegans, isn't it? Who walk around and they go, well, you're going to make your shoes out of bamboo or something, you know, so that, you know, you don't harm any animals in the making of your shoes that you wear. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Let's have a little clip from Ed Miliband. This is him talking about solar panels on schools.
Great British Energy is your publicly owned energy company, and here's its first project, putting solar panels on the roofs of schools and hospitals in your community. That's what a publicly owned energy company can do for our country.
Yeah, this is GB Energy again, this nonsensical non-entity of a company, which still only has one employee, poor old Jürgen, you know, who I go on about all the time, Jürgen Meyer, who goes out to work every day, tells his wife he's going off to do a job, doesn't actually do anything. Because he's not going to have anything to do with putting solar panels on roofs, is he? They're going to have to hire a load of people to do it.
Exactly, and there are two really big questions here, because on the one hand, you've got a Labour government that said it wants to ban and get rid of all the quangos that cost far too much money, and I think we can all get behind that. But this is the biggest quango of them all, and it doesn't even produce energy.
Do anything.
And it's beggars belief, because when you take the NHS decision to abolish NHS England, because that was too bureaucratic and it was doubling up things that the Department of Health was actually doing. What is he doing in that department? It doesn't take someone to be on £500,000 worth of salary a year, which Ed Miliband went out to defend because he said, I want the brightest and the best, and we've got GB Energy, and it's going to be all this great. It could be a junior official in the Department of Desnes, or whatever it's called, that he runs, to say, I think we can buy solar panels and put them on schools and hospitals. It doesn't require a quanger that's going to cost billions of pounds.
Different company?
Exactly, and a chief executive that's going to be on £500,000 salary. That's a total waste of taxpayers' money. And I would hope, my secret hope, it won't happen in the spring statement, but at some point, maybe the next budget...
Well, they're going to axe it.
They're going to axe it, exactly.
Well, funny enough, I mean, Ross Clark in The Sun today is saying that she needs to axe more, not less, of what she's doing. Because, of course, having said that they're going to have a bonfire of the quangos, like all governments, they've actually started up 27 more of them. And there's more quangos than ever, you know. But let's go back to Rachel Reeves, because she's still in the firing line, looking very miserable on the front page of the Daily Mail, one day before this statement that she's got to make. I mean, she claims that she's been up all night, up all weekend. Somebody brought in some homemade biscuits, which was very nice. But she's once again being accused of taking freebies. She's paid £67,505 as Chancellor on top of her £91,000 salary. I mean, it was pointed out to me yesterday that I think her husband's a civil servant, who I presume is not one of those she's going to slash and burn and sack. Between them, they make in excess of £300,000 a year. She's apparently declared receiving tickets to the theatre, the National Theatre in London, on the South Bank on December the 27th. Very nice, bit of a Christmas present, worth £276. And showing that day, apparently, with the importance of being earnest, rather bizarrely, by Oscar Wilde, and also an adaptation of a classic children's novel, Ballet Shoes. I mean, why does she think that she's going to get away with getting all these freebies after everything that happened with Lord Ali, everything that happened with the free clothes? Remember, she got some free clothes, I think, from Lord Ali as well. The free holidays, the free penthouses, the free New York apartments. I mean, it's a beggar's belief, isn't it?
It is. I mean, look, you know, the only way that I would even suggest maybe trying to spin it, if she's in a bit of a hole here, is that she's supporting the nighttime economy.
Oh, yes.
And the creative industries and all the rest of it. They bring in a lot of money. So
well, except she's not supporting it because she didn't pay for the tickets.
Well,
I mean, that's the problem.
And you're right. I mean, it's... and I think there is clearly consternation amongst her Labour cabinet colleagues, because Heidi Alexander, the Transport Secretary, was asked about this, and she said, well, I think she was too busy. Her diary, she hasn't got time to go to
well, funny enough, we had
parties.
Heidi Alexander on yesterday, and I asked her about this, and I said, have you ever taken any free tickets for anything? And she said no. But she wouldn't elaborate on it, because I think in a slightly earlier interview, she'd given a bit more information, which is what they've all jumped on.
Yes.
And she was obviously told, don't say any more.
Oh, right.
Just say that you haven't taken any freebies, because then she said to me, I don't really wish to add anything to what Rachel Reeves said to Laura Kunsberg. Or have we got a clip of Reeves or Heidi? Oh, Heidi, all right, let's have a go. Rachel Reeves, your colleague, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, under fire today for taking some free tickets to Sabrina Carpenter's concert. Have you been in receipt of any free tickets recently?
No, I haven't.
Do you think she should have taken them?
So I heard the Chancellor answering questions from the BBC's Laura Kunsberg on this yesterday, and I don't have anything further to add to the comments that she made.
OK. Heidi Alexander, thank you very much indeed. Secretary of State for Transport hasn't taken any free tickets. That's a good one. So she's obviously been told off by the SPAD, right, who's gone, don't say any more.
Exactly. That is the sound of a minister that has received a call from the number 10 political communications office to be like, do not say any more. Because I think you're right, in a previous interview she went on to
said she'd been very, very busy, haven't been able to see any concerts at all over the last 9 months, and she said, as a member of Parliament, I've never accepted tickets to any concerts or anything like that, which isn't a sort of decrying of the Chancellor, but that's how the media saw it.
Exactly. And at a time where, you know, there's going to be cuts to welfare, we know that, where there are people that are obviously on the left that are going to be up in arms about that, you know, it's not a good look. You know, you've got to read the room.
But this is the bit that I don't get, and I said this yesterday, you know, surely to heavens Keir Starmer or his people would say to all senior cabinet members and even maybe junior cabinet members, for heaven's sake, don't take any freebies while we're going through this period of what is effectively going to be called austerity. Because people are going to have, you know, things taken off them. As you said, you know, disabled people are going to have money taken away, pensioners having money taken away, loads of people suffering, prices of everything going up, and you're taking free tickets to Sabrina bloody Carpenter. I mean, what's going on?
Yeah, exactly. And to be fair, look, I mean, I think there are obviously there's perks to every job, and when you're, you know, in the public eye and you're dealing with the economy and things like that, and if you're a minister in a very senior position, you'll get invitations to things.
Of course.
And I think you will go to.
But they could have a policy of not accepting it. They could change the law and say, look, please do not offer us things. I mean, in this company and in many companies, I mean, we've had people calling in yesterday, there is something called the Bribery Act, right? And there are things that you can't do. I mean, we had Jeremy Carr had a guy calling his show yesterday who said, I work for a company, he said, if I accept anything worth more than £25, I have to declare it to the company, and the company has to declare it to make sure they're not in breach of the Bribery Act. And surely any government ministers should have that applied to them as well, shouldn't they?
I think so, and I think it takes far too long now, because you've got to declare things on your MP's register of interests, but that comes out about 3 months later, so it's almost as if the story people would have forgotten.
And this is what Keir Starmer got so wrong, didn't he? Because he's so obsessed with the rules. He said, I declared everything within the rules. Well, that's not the point. The point is you shouldn't take freebies. You shouldn't be getting somebody buying your suits for you and buying your glasses and paying for your holiday. It shouldn't happen.
Exactly, and optics matter. And I do remember, you know, going back to, you know, under David Cameron, you know, when he and George Osborne were saying that we're all in this together, because it was austerity back then, and as it is going to be now, whatever kind of
whatever they want to call it.
But you know, he was absolutely determined that if anybody, you know, did something that perceived to be outside of that narrative, then you would be gone, and you would. So there was a discipline within those certainly those early years when you're dealing with something like this. But there seems to be just it plays into a narrative. It's an easy hit.
The question that nobody's asking, and I think it did come out when the story first dropped about the free tickets for Sabrina Carpenter, that it was a banking organisation or a financial institution, I think, that invited her because they got a box at the O2. Nobody's asking, are they then going to now have undue influence over the Chancellor of the Exchequer for their own purposes? I mean, because, you know, we all know why they invite politicians and why they invite journalists to things. They expect to get a sort of an easier ride, or they maybe are calling a favour at some point down the road. And that's the question that's not being asked.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, things like this, they shouldn't just be seen as freebies, you know. So what should have happened, but again, they've not explained it. And I think Reeves's defence is appalling. You know,
dreadful.
She's gone to say, well, you couldn't buy these tickets because, you know, basically because she was in a luxury.
Well, we've got that as well. Have a look at this. This is the worst explanation ever of why she took a freebie.
I went with a member of my family to see a concert a couple of weeks ago. I do now have security, which means it's not as easy as it would have been in the past to just sit in a concert. Although that would probably be a lot easier for everyone concerned. So, look, I took those tickets to go with a member of my family. I thought that was the right thing to do from a security perspective.
Did you pay for them? Because you could pay for them.
Well, these weren't tickets that you could pay for. So there wasn't a price to those tickets. Obviously, I will declare that the value of them, but they weren't tickets that you were able to buy.
So she knows how much they cost, but you can't pay for them, apparently.
Yes, I think
interesting.
We're supposed to feel sorry for her, that she can't sit amongst the public, therefore she has to.
But all those women and girls as well in the audience looking up to her, going, oh, look, there's Rachel Reeves, she's the first woman Chancellor. Isn't it amazing? Just like Keir Starmer. You know, isn't it marvellous? Fantastic. Absolutely unbelievable. And they just don't get it, do they?
No. And clearly by that answer, she just didn't know what she should or shouldn't say. And this idea about security, you know, I've worked with very senior politicians that had security There is a way of working around it.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's much easier for security to say, oh, well, we'll just put you away from other people because you minimise the risk. But you can sit in a theatre because, you know, the security risk of no one going to the National Theatre to see the importance of being earnest is going to be really much of a security threat.
I wouldn't have thought so.
They're not going to know that she's there on any given day. They don't turn up, they don't know where she's going to be sat. There are ways of...
Don't you also have to go through... I mean, I must admit, I haven't been to the National Theatre for quite a long time, funnily enough. And do you not have to go through some kind of security arch to get into the theatre in the first place?
You do, actually. Even if you just want to go to the cafe or the bookshop.
Exactly. Well, there you are. Do you go to the bookshop often?
Yeah, I pass through it. I pass through it.
So, I mean, this is the thing. So, you know, you might get something... Somebody really hates you to that extent they're going to throw, you know, I don't know, a glass of wine over you or something. You know, obviously that's a problem. But it doesn't mean you have to sit in a special box away from everybody.
And I think I remember at one point, I think you know, Boris Johnson and Carrie Johnson went to the theatre and sat amongst, you know,
the hoi polloi,
the great unwashed that we are. But you know, you have security officers dotted around. Okay, you have to buy up more seats, but that costs a hell of a lot less than just being, you know, flung into a box where you've probably got, you know, wine and, you know, goodness what on
absolutely.
On tap. So it's a terrible look.
But also, if you know, they're all paid reasonably well. You know, if I wanted to take my family to see, I don't know, Taylor Swift or something, you know, and I decided to buy a box, or they wanted to go to Wimbledon, I buy them tickets for that. You know, I don't charge it to the bloody taxpayer because I can't do that, and I wouldn't anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and this is the problem. They feel as though they're entitled to do it.
Yes, exactly.
That's the problem.
That's the thing. Yeah, exactly.
We should probably stop talking. It's 21 minutes past 6 already. Coming back, we're going to talk about Charlie Mullins, OBE. Believe it or not, you know, the man from Pimlico Plumbers, who's a frequent guest on this show and many other shows on Talk, was threatened with having his OBE stripped from him because he didn't like some of the things he was saying on social media, which to me is a bit of a sinister encroachment into free speech, isn't it? We'll come back with that. Plus, we've got plenty more to talk about, including record migrant numbers and Islamophobia as well. The new definition by Angela Rayner, who, by the way, asked if she could go on a safari when she was in Ethiopia the other day, and was told, no, that's not really what we're here for, Madam Secretary of State. Anyway, so we're going to talk about how you might be a victim of Islamophobia, even if you're not a Muslim. That's going to complicate the matter, isn't it? This is Talk.
looking to cancel Easter on the grounds of promoting inclusivity. I mean, how can you be promoting inclusivity if you are purposely cancelling not just a religious festival, but part of British culture, but also something that has been celebrated for thousands of years and will continue to be? You know, this is part of our fabric. This is part of our very, very makeup. Now,
it's part of our legal fabric.
Well, legal, yes, it is. But legal,
it is.
Cultural,
it's not a
societal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 25 minutes past 6. By the way, the leader of the opposition will be on the show later on. Kemi Badenoch will be talking to us at some point or other about all the things that are going on ahead, of course, of Rachel Reeves' big budget statement tomorrow. And also, I'm sure she'll have plenty to say about Rachel Reeves and the freebies as well. Let's have a look at the front page of the Daily Telegraph. Threat to take Reform donors OBE ignites free speech. Well, Charlie Mullins is a colourful character, to say the least, I suppose you would say. Founded Pimlico Plumbers, made an absolute fortune, very successful businessman, has taken quite a few brickbacks over the course of time. He's now he was a Tory for a long time. He was very pro-Remain as well, funnily enough, wasn't he? Which he got a lot of flack from some of our listeners and viewers. But he's moved to Spain. He got an OBE for his services to business, and they've threatened to take it off him, apparently, because they didn't like the fact that he was saying some things on social media and on television that they didn't like. And when I say they, I mean I suppose the establishment, the people that give OBEs.
Yeah, exactly, and some criticism that it was against London Mayor Sir Sadiq Khan.
Oh, yes.
Don't forget that important.
I bet he was behind this, wasn't he? Because he doesn't like people making fun of him.
Exactly, and that's why I think, you know, of all the things that people say all the time on Twitter and on social media, I think he feels as though he's been singled out because he was criticising Sadiq Khan.
He had a go at Carol Vorderman as well, which is always quite good fun. I mean, the thing is, you know, if you're going to start giving people honours, you give them the honour surely for something they've done. You don't take the honour away because of something. I mean, I can understand you taking it away if you get involved in some kind of criminality, but not because you've given an opinion on something that you don't like.
Exactly, and there are lots of people in politics all the time that get OBEs and throw, you know, different accusations around, and sort of, you know, that's all part of the political course that we have in this country. And now all of a sudden, because he has been so open as a Reform supporter, he's donated, he's obviously talked about standing for the party. I know that caused a bit of an internal row because, as you say, he was a very big Remainer. So I think a few people raised a few eyebrows as to who that conversation was with. But anyway, he sees it as political and motivated attack on him because he's supporting someone that is clearly a party that is in a pole position to be the opposition.
And there is, I mean, I put out a tweet last night, there is a sense that there is this kind of, you know, they talk about the blob being the civil service, but there's also this kind of establishment blob, isn't there? Nobody quite knows who it is or what makes it up, but it's people who kind of appear to run the country from a kind of, you know, position of unelected, you know, authoritarianism, if you like. If you're not part of the club, then you can't be in it.
That totally, 100%, and that's the issue that I think lots of people face. So, you know, if you take Elon Musk and people like Dominic Cummings, now of course they're two different people, and one's a lot more successful than the other.
Yeah, but they are sort of outsiders, aren't they?
Exactly, but because they understand the absolute premise of, you know, you can't hide behind the department. So if the department of whatever it is, health, education, that says, well, you know, we're looking into this intern, who is responsible? You can't hide behind a department or a building. So who is the actual person that's complained? That's, if I was Charlie Mullins, I'd be saying this, you know, this honours and forfeit committee is investigating. Well, who's complained? Who's actually making that decision? Who's recommending? I want to know the official, because you can bet your bottom dollar that official will be someone that's maybe slightly leftward leaning. Or that's in the
or who's been asked to do it by one of these characters like Sadiq Khan.
Exactly. Who turns out to be maybe not as politically neutral, or, you know.
Well, you remember going back to the days days when Nigel Farage had his row with Coutts Bank, and he made a request. I wonder if you can make a request to this forfeiture committee for them to actually have to reveal who it was that made the complaint, in the same way that Nigel Farage had to, you know, requisition the messages from inside Coutts, which you're apparently allowed to do legally.
Yes, you probably can. Yeah,
there's a name for it. I can't remember what it is. It's you know, you make an information request or something like that.
There'd be something along those lines, an FOI. I mean, and even if they have to sort of block out maybe even the person, because the department will want to protect that individual because they might be too junior, but at least you then get to see what they've actually said, or in a submission, and what they've actually recommended to, whether it's a minister or a department, so you can actually see the conversations that they're having about you, which can be quite revealing.
I bet. And it's a rather good picture, isn't it, of Charlie Mullins? He's in his sort of penthouse flat, which I think overlooks the Thames. He's got a bar behind him. He's got one of those fluffy cushions. He's got yellow and blue socks, which is never a good idea, in my view. And he's got a DG, is that Dolce & Gabbana belt, I suppose, and Charlie Mullins OBE on a cushion.
Yeah, there you are.
You know,
very modest.
At home with Charlie Mullins.
Yeah, very modest.
Very nice. Anyway, good luck to him. He's a good man. I think we're hoping to get him on the show later. So, and he's always, you know, frequently he's open to ridicule. He doesn't mind people making fun of him. He doesn't mind people having a go at him. He's a decent guy, and I think it's a disgrace what they've done. No, you know,
I think that's right, because for whatever he and the reason why, you know, I think he's supporting reform, and I'm not, but the reason why they're getting popularity and why people like Charlie, is because he is outspoken and he says, even if you don't articulate everything in the most, you know, poetic and romantic way, he speaks what lots of people are thinking.
He happens to have made very good out of his lots. But he's a multi-millionaire. He drives a hideous purple Rolls Royce, I think it is, or it's a really horrible colour. But it's a, you know, very expensive car. He's done very well for himself. So you know, we'll hopefully talk to him later on. Let's talk about this leaked White House text message story, which is quite remarkable. I mean, this must be the kind of thing, if when you worked in government behind the scenes, you would dread to wake up to in the morning. You know, like some minister's left his secret documents on a bus or a train, or somebody's discovered a secret WhatsApp group, or, you know, Isabel Oakeshot's got hold of something you've said to somebody else. I mean, this is amazing. This is Donald Trump's cabinet who have somehow managed to feed information to a journalist by mistake, who happens to be in a, I don't know why, but the guy who's called Jeffrey Goldberg, editor-in-chief of the Atlantic magazine, apparently a confidential group on the Signal app, which I'm not familiar with. It must be an American one. J.D. Vance is in here, Mike Waltz, the National Security Advisor, and of course Pete Hegseth, the US Defence Secretary, all in a WhatsApp group. I don't know what a journalist is doing in there in the first place, but good luck to him. But they've sent out this very confidential information about how they were going to bomb the Houthis, and it seems to have got to the journalist as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, well, I used to dread waking up most mornings, just in general, in the dying days of the Tory government.
What have they done now? Right?
Exactly. So to wake up to a headline like this would be, you know, you wouldn't need a morning coffee.
No.
You know, that adrenaline would be probably... But you're absolutely, it's amazing. Signal is an app that we were always told as well that is more secure than WhatsApp.
Okay, I've never heard of it.
So the idea that obviously now a journalist has been able to be admitted into this group with the Vice President...
they admitted him in.
Oh, yes. Somebody must have created the group, let him in, and it contains the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, the head of the National Security, I think the Secretary of State, Rubio, whatever his name is. And so it's a big wig audience, cast list.
It really is.
And openly discussing exactly what kind of attack they might take on the Houthis, how much they hate sort of picking up the pieces for Europe and defending Europe, because a lot of trade comes through the Red Sea.
Yes.
And that's where the Houthis have targeted last summer. So it's a conversation amongst the big wigs of American officials and politicians saying, oh, we've got to pick up the pieces again, isn't this terrible? And typical Trump, when he doesn't know what's going on, or if nobody's told him, maybe because somebody's too frightened of this.
I mean, who would get that job? You know, you knock at the, Mr. President, got something to tell you. What's that? Apparently, here we go. On March the 14th, we managed to send detailed policy debate on basically what we were going to do on explicit operation and details of forthcoming strikes on Yemen, including information about targets, weapons the US would be deploying, and the attack sequencing, which appears to have been shared by the US Defence Secretary and the Vice President.
Mm.
Right.
There you
okay,
go.
then.
I mean, you can't fault them for transparency.
True. I mean, listen, yeah, and also it could have been worse, I suppose. I mean, it could have been. I mean, according to the version that the Telegraph has got, the one thing that perhaps they might regret slightly, well, I'm sure they won't, when it comes to Keir Starmer, the cabinet all complain about defending freeloading Europe, who they aren't very keen on, and apparently they're calling Europe pathetic freeloaders.
Yes.
Yeah. So the special relationship is sort of hanging by a thread currently.
It is, and at a time where Trump has obviously imposed 25% tariffs on Europe, the idea that we've got politicians back home here that still want to get into bed with Europe politically to be even more closer. I mean, why on earth they want to do that when we're facing our own troubles?
I know.
I'll never know. But in pure Trump style, when asked about it, said, I don't know about it. But, The Atlantic, which is the magazine where this editor seems to have got in part of that group, said, I think it was I think he said something like, it was going out of business anyway. It's not a very popular magazine.
That's right. He does say that a lot.
Talk it down.
He says that about Time magazine, doesn't he? Is that still going?
Going out of business, yeah. Talk it down. Nothing to see here.
Yeah. It'll probably, by the end of the week, it'll be fake news.
Yeah.
But, anyway, listen, coming up, we're going to talk a bit about the definition of Islamophobia, some record migrant numbers as well. Heathrow, still in the news, because we had Heidi Alexander on yesterday, as we said. Keir Starmer, after she backed the Heathrow boss and said she thought they'd done very well recovering and getting back up and running within sort of 15 hours. Apparently Starmer has refused to back the Heathrow boss, and also there's some legal action coming their way, which I predicted yesterday. 6:35. Back to Charlie Rowley after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:37. I'm Mike Graham. Mike says, Pam, why are the blob threatening to take Charlie Mullins' OBE away for speaking the truth? Well, it's a very good question. And Stephen says, if someone accepts £600 tickets, what would they do if offered £1 million for a government contract? Well, that's a good question. Let's get a voice note.
Hi, Mike. Steve from Stamford here. Great show as ever. I've heard the bad news about your Oasis competition. I've heard it's been cancelled. Rachel's run off with the tickets.
Yeah, unfortunately, she hasn't been able to get her hands on the tickets because it's still on. Trust me, have a listen. How'd you fancy winning tickets to the hottest gig of the century? Here at Talk, we're giving you the chance to bag yourself a pair of tickets to Oasis at Wembley this summer. Plus, we're giving away a whopping £10,000 and putting you up for the weekend in a London hotel. All you need to do is text the word prize to 83338 and you're in the draw. Alternatively, you can enter by post. Once again, all you need to do is text the word prize to 83338 or you can enter by post. Good luck.
18 plus UK excluding Northern Ireland. Enter by text for £2 plus one standard network charge by 11 p.m. on the 7th of April 2025. Or post your name and number to Oasis Competition, PO Box 3190. Colchester CO2 8GP to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of April 2025. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
This is a News Broadcasting Network promotion. Here's one from Ian who says, we should have allowed Angela Rayner on a safari, Mike, and fed us to the lions, like she's done to us. It's a bit harsh. I mean, I think that's probably not what you should be suggesting for Angela Rayner, but it is a joke, by the way. If anybody's listening wants to, report anyone to the police, nobody's actually seriously considering feeding anyone to the lions. It is ridiculous. Let's talk about the new Islamophobia rule. I was talking of Angela Rayner, because it turns out, a piece of the Telegraph says, people mistakenly identified as Muslims could be victims of Islamophobia. So, effectively, the law is so loose and weird that, if somebody thought you were a Muslim, you could be claim that you were a victim of Islamophobia.
Yes, yeah, and if I identified as one.
Or if you identified as one.
Because it all goes back to the idea of trying to put a legal definition of what Islamophobia is. There was consternation about this at the point because it could curtail, and it would curtail. It's basically blasphemy laws. It basically curtails free speech. Right. You can't therefore attack or criticise the religion or Islamic faith or something that's going wrong within a particular religion, or call things out, or question things that are going on in society, whether it's arranged marriages still, for example, whether it's oppression of women and girls still within a particular cultural
or
faith.
First cousins marriage. That would be considered Islamophobic, presumably.
Well, exactly. Well, we'd get a knock on the door from the old bill, because so the idea that then, still without being able to define Islamophobia, because I don't think you can, because it's there's a huge difference. And I think most people know the difference between what is hate speech, what is racist and misogynistic language versus just criticisms and being able to say openly. I think there's a problem.
But this is the danger, isn't it, though, of having something called hate speech, because your hate speech may be different from somebody else's hate speech, and so once you start going down that particular rabbit hole, then suddenly everybody's got a reason to be offended or to say that what you've said is somehow hateful against them, and that's why I think you have to just be just do away with it. I mean, there's already plenty of crimes that you can commit by inciting violence or by saying things which are likely to cause a breach of the peace and all of that. But I don't think they should be coming after us for anything that we say, aside from the laws that already exist.
Yeah, exactly. And because that's the thing, the whole criticism about the two-tier care and this two-tier policing system is that actually some communities either get a lighter touch versus others. Yeah. And, when you're seeing the law should be there for everybody, regardless of your race, religion, sexual orientation, gender,
of course.
Whether you identify as a raccoon.
Why should you get special treatment because you're a Muslim? Why should you get special, treatment from being, from having people poking fun at you? I don't think that's right.
Totally. And when we're seeing, things like, Easter being cancelled in schools, but when we're seeing, maybe riots in the streets, but you're seeing a two-tier policing system because, if you're in Birmingham, the chief inspector there will say, OK, if you've got any weapons, just put them to one side.
Put them to one side,
But if you're in, the
just put them in a bin. No, I can't do that. The bins are full and overflowing. And there's a giant rat running around it, so I'm not going anywhere near it, takes.
Exactly. And if you're in somewhere else in the southeast, then the police will come down on you like a ton of hot bricks.
Yeah.
So, it's a justice system that needs to be held up in the way in which it's always been designed, which is obviously innocent until proven guilty, but no one is above the law, and actually everybody should face the same kind of justice.
Everybody's the same under the law, absolutely right.
And the sentencing guidlines that came out not so long ago, because if you're an ethnic minority, maybe that you should have a lighter sentence. Or a woman. What ridiculous.
I know, absolutely mad. And let's go to a more slightly fun story. Page 25 of The Sun, marathon running destroys your brain. Now, I could have told them this for years and years and years. I'm not against people who want to run in marathons, but they do tend to be a little bit pleased with themselves, don't they? They always go, oh, I'm running a marathon. How do you know people are running marathons? They tell you. They come up to you and go, I'm running in a marathon. You go, what are you supposed to say to that? Well done, congratulations. Yes. But they want you to ask what, and then afterwards they, and they want you to ask them how long it took them and what time did you do, because it was better than the one I did last year. I don't care, honestly.
It is quite smug, and you see it repeatedly on their social media. They're posting their times, that their new training went for a morning run today. Yeah. Well, that's nice.
Yeah, good for you.
Exactly.
According, this is from Dr. Carlos Matute of Spain's University of the Basque Country in Bilbao, very nice, said an extensive change was seen in areas linked to coordination, senses and emotions. Follow-up scans after they'd done the marathons showed normal levels again 2 months later, but basically it's something to do with myelin, which is affecting basically functions of parts of the brain. because apparently when you run, you lose whatever these functions are, because I guess your brain is drained of all of its proteins and all the rest of it. So it does actually, destroy parts of your brain.
Yeah, exactly, because I think once your body has burnt off the sort of, the fat that you've stored and all the sort of other proteins and carbs, so it then obviously identifies other part of the body. So, so I've got it the wrong way around. When you get rid of your carbs, when you burn those off, it then attacks the fat.
Yes,
in your
takes
body.
all the other things.
And then it starts draining everything else, so which obviously that particular chemical in the mind, the brain, that starts to go. So it does impact on then things like coordination.
Yeah.
So you might be running around in circles, but you might be doing more laps
because
than
the London Marathon is going to be around again soon, and I mean it's one of my pet hates, because I happen to live not far from the route of the London Marathon, and so my entire neighbourhood is basically marooned. You can't get out of it. You can't get into it by any means at all. You're not allowed to cross the road. Because so if I'm normally not here at the weekends, thankfully, and I always come back on the Sunday once the marathon's gone. But and I'm very much in awe of the professional marathon runners. The guys that break records and that do it in sort of 2 hours flat, because they're incredible athletes. But all the other bozos, 56,000 people, and then all the sort of the love that they get, and the BBC are all over it for hours and hours on end. You have to watch it for hours on end. Everybody, isn't it marvellous? Aren't they marvellous? Great people.
Yes, there's a man dressed as a fridge with the back,
there's always one, isn't there?
What's the point?
Yeah, I'm sorry about this marathon hate speech that we're doing here. The only thing worse than the marathon runners are the triathlon types.
Yes,
people that like to swim, cycle, and run in the same sort of afternoon, and then call themselves Iron Men.
Yes, no one asked them to do it. No one asked them.
Meanwhile, your wife's sitting at home going, "Blimey, what a complete
yes. You can't have a life, and you can't have fun.
You can't do anything. No,
because I'd be if I was doing a marathon.
No, I can't go out drinking because I'm training for a marathon. Are you? Okay, then. See you.
Or even just fancy a night out, or just you pass sort of a burger place and you think, I can't fancy it, but you can't touch it. No.
You can have plenty of pasta though.
Yes, because I've got to go into the Thames and spend 10k or whatever.
I know, and catch some kind of ghastly disease. Anyway, that's enough from us. I'm sure people have said earlier that fat
good luck
idiots
to you all.
Are having a go at people. Anyway, never mind. Coming up, we've got more to talk about. Heathrow's still in the news. We need to talk about a kids' TV show that's apparently got a gender-neutral raccoon, and also they found some life on Mars. Believe it or not. 0344 499 1000. Andy in Southsea says, good morning, Mike. Hearing about all these freebies from Rachel Reeves, that's a good new one, is really getting my goat. I got my water bill from Southern Water yesterday, and it's gone up by 60%. And my council tax has gone up too, which Liar Starmer said wouldn't happen. I'm so over these clowns, and I feel proper mugged off. And then he says, P.S. I don't know how we're going to react to this. Charlie really looks better without the beard. Well, he has got a beard, though, so how can you say that? He must have been looking at you before the beard.
I've been spotted before and after.
No,
well, I might. It was only supposed to be for a few months. So
maybe we should find a picture of you without the beard and put it up and see if people can vote on it. Beard or not beard for Charlie. 6:46. We'll be back after this.
there's multiple veterans who've served this country sleeping on the streets of Britain. While if you jump the queue, you arrive under illegitimate circumstances, you throw your passport in the sea, you pretend you don't know who you are, you put up in a nice 3-4-star hotel, given a meal voucher and driving lessons. I mean,
but I don't.
It's enough to send normal people around the.
But this is what I meant when I said I don't. To me, the beauty of this station, you know, and you and I will be barking up the same tree. It's common sense to me. It's common sense if you're loaded and you want to help people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:49. Charlie Rowley's here with me. I do a triathlon every day, every Friday, Mike, says Jules in London. A pint of Guinness, fish and chips, plus a dessert. Yes, very good. And Sean in Norfolk says Richard III should have donated the free tickets to a charity. Absolutely right. That's, of course, a reference to Rachel Reeves. We've been using that as Richard III for a while. Now, here's the most unbelievable story of the day, actually. We've just fallen upon it. Pages 8 and 9 of The Sun. Keir hits the road. Apparently, Keir Starmer is vowing to drive down the cost of motoring. Now, if you ever heard anything more ridiculous than that, please raise your hand, because anything we know is that the cost of motoring goes up and up and up. I was just talking to the guy that drove me into work today. We were talking about the bus lane fines going up, parking fines going up, you know, ULEZ charges going up and fines going up. They're putting a toll on the Blackwall Tunnel here in London, and they're building a second tunnel, which is also going to have a toll. You know, I mean, the cost of motoring has never been higher. But they've launched this kind of anti-pothole blitz, £1.6 billion. Keir Starmer was out yesterday, believe it or not, looking at some potholes. Check this out.
This is pothole damage.
So you can see it, yeah.
Hit a pothole and it just ruins the sidewalk.
I hit to a pothole. Be strong enough to basically, yes, it will be.
I've lost at least 3 tyres down to potholes, twice in 2 months.
The first thing we need to do is get a bit of accountability into it to know which councils are doing what where, how many times they're filling in holes, so we can get a bit of data on that, which we haven't got. But this, what we're announcing today, is to incentivise them to get on and do it.
We obviously have customers day in, day out coming in with the same issues, and I think having spoken to a man who can actually, you know, bring change and make something happen about it, you know, that can only be a positive thing for him to come in and see it in real terms.
I had to change all of my tyres at the end, and it's quite nice that we see things done to fill in the potholes at the moment.
I mean, that's a Labour Party sort of political broadcast. You know, there's the Prime Minister in a suit in Halford's workshop. I mean, this is a guy who quite often wears a black T-shirt, you know, by Lord Alley, because he tries to look cool, or rolls his sleeves up when he's really doing something important, showing that he's at work. And he's wearing a suit and a tie in a Halford's.
I know.
What's he doing?
Well, it's hard to stay awake during that. A little yawn came across my head. But it's interesting that chap there said, oh, it's nice to meet someone that might be able to bring change. I didn't realise he'd met Rod Stewart. He went out, he went out to fill his own pothole, if you remember.
That's right.
Because you know, it is an issue.
What they should be doing is talking to Mr. Pothole, you know, who we speak to all the time. You know, it's amazing that the sort of the cognoscenti in the Labour government have suddenly decided that potholes are actually quite important to people, and they're going to fill them in. But as usual, they probably won't do it.
No, and there are 3 quick points here. I mean, first of all, I mean, billions of pounds are spent on potholes. It's one that every government wheels out. I mean, I remember the Tories said there was
wheels
2 billion.
Out. I see what you did there. Very good.
The Tories said £2 billion. Keir Starmer's now saying 1.6 billion. I do think there needs to be an element of accountability for sure, because it goes back to what we were saying before. The Department of Communities and Local Government will be responsible. Local councils. Who has been Mr. or Mrs. Pothole in your council that has had this money given to you, taxpayers' money from central government, and why have your potholes not been filled, or why they've not been repaired properly?
Yes.
You know, we do need to know that information.
Right. And I've actually got a pet peeve about this, because my very firm belief, is that the potholes have got worse in this country since the advent of electric cars and electric vehicles, because they're so much heavier. If you take, and, I mean, look at all the vans now. I mean, all the kind of food delivery vans that you get from all the supermarkets, they're all electric. You know, a lot of the sort of the courier vans are electric. A lot of buses are now electric. and many cars, and so the weight on the roads is now, I think, way over and above what it used to be, and that's why the roads are disintegrating even quicker.
Yeah, I think that's right. And the final thing, because I think this would be interesting to your listeners who are probably driving this morning, and lots of them will be.
Many of them will be, yeah.
You know, Rachel Reeves in her last budget said, and she made a big song and dance about saying that, you know, fuel duty has been frozen, you know, we've kept the price at the pump down for over a decade now, and that's obviously something the Tories did. And she made a big song and dance about saying that she could put it up, and it was an option presented to her, but she said she wasn't going to do it. So she's not going to increase the price at the pump for motorists.
Yeah.
And now the fact that Keir Starmer's obviously said he's going to bring costs down, you would have thought that that's not going to increase at the spring statement, the emergency budget tomorrow. But you would also hope that she doesn't raise it in the budget when she has to.
Right.
I think we'll have to come back asking for more money from people in the autumn when she comes up for a new budget. So it's one to watch.
Right.
Do the Labour government really support motorists? Let's see.
I can't believe that they will suddenly change the habits of a lifetime, because all they've ever done for the best part of my lifetime, really, is hammer the motorists. You know, road tax has gone through the roof. I mean, this was a bit of a stealth tax that nobody noticed, actually, in the budget, where most people's road tax has actually doubled. You know, where if you were paying 200, you're now paying 400. You know, if you were paying 500, it's going up to 1,000. I mean, it's ridiculous how much people are paying. But there we are. Let's talk about gender-neutral raccoons, shall we? Because parents, apparently, there's a show, I haven't seen it, I don't suppose you have either. It's a show called Hey Dougie, an award-winning cartoon show aimed at 5-year-olds on CBeebies. And there's an animal called Wren, introducing siblings in an episode of Hey Dougie, and apparently in one of the episodes, which is aimed at 5-year-olds, the raccoon called Wren introduces their siblings, and it's all gender-neutral language, you know. So people have said that it's inappropriate and confusing for children who are still learning how to speak, because children are going, well, is it a boy or a girl raccoon? And quite frankly, nobody knows.
Well,
I mean,
as you can imagine,
Rocky Raccoon. I think he was a he, wasn't he?
Well, as you can imagine, I watch nothing else.
Yes. There's squirrels in it, right? Squirrels. They meet different animals with their siblings. Dog Arlo is shown with his siblings. Monkey Lucy's got her siblings, and a yak. There's a yak in it as well. Rami, alongside his siblings, and then adds, and this is Wren and their siblings.
And that's what's, you know, caused a lot of problem, because, you know, parents, as you say, parents who've
Why are
got
they
kids,
bothering with this rubbish?
You know, well, it's especially when the rest of them, the rest of those families, whether you're part of the Squirrel Society or the, you know, whatever animal that features, you know, their siblings are all, you know, boys and girls, and then all of a sudden this, you know, the Wrens come along, and you know, it
hasn't got any brothers or sisters.
No brothers and sisters, and it's they and them.
That's confusing for children.
And I think that is the problem, because, you know, in a society where you need to have strict guidelines for parenting, when you need to have these, you know, societal norms. I can't even believe I'm describing it as societal norms. You just need to be brought up, you know, he, her, or you know, he, she, or maybe not, maybe not. You know what I'm saying. You know,
I do.
Gender identity. You know, to allow kids to get that early child development. If you start playing around with
it's like Donald Trump in his inauguration speech. You know, there are 2 genders. That's it. The end.
Exactly.
Thank you very much. I mean, that's very clear for kids. This is what they need. This one from Brendan in London. He says, "Morning, Mike. Ray, marathon brain damage. Can we get the same researchers to look into the damage cycling in lycra causes to the brain? I suggest it does quite a lot of damage, so it must be stopped on health and safety grounds. Certainly the way people cycle when they're wearing lycra certainly would suggest that their brain's not functioning properly.
Well, yes,
because they quite often think that they can hog the road, despite the fact that they're on a very, very small machine compared to a car." Stuart in Perthshire says, "Morning, Mike. Ever since Charlie grew the beard, he has a Commander Rowley look about him." I think he means that you look as if you could be a sort of naval commander of some description.
Well,
and you may like that. Should we talk about Meghan just before we get to the end of the hour? Meghan, a fast buck on the front page of The Sun. We'll be talking about this a little bit later on in the show. Duchess of Sussex has been accused of exploiting her own young children as part of her latest money-making venture. I mean, could this woman get any more ghastly?
Well, exactly, and I think this is on the back of, you know, I read in the Times also where Kate has obviously stopped, Princess Kate has obviously stopped telling people what she's wearing. Or the palace said they're going to stop sort of telling people what her labels are. Meghan, quick as a flash.
She's opened a shop.
Exactly, she's opened a shop and she's telling people what kind of clothes she wears now.
And you can buy them as well in her shop, presumably.
Well, no doubt. But I don't tend to spend too much time reading about Meghan.
No, I didn't watch the first. I didn't watch the first Netflix series, and I have no intention of watching the new one. But you can get a £400 happiness retreat necklace if you want. £595 for a pair of Saint Laurent sandals. £1,068 for a Windsor gown.
But again, cashing in on the Windsors, and they don't want to be part of the royal family. If they don't want to be part of the great heritage that is the Windsors and Windsor, then you should just do something else. But the fact that they still insist on being called the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, so they want all the perks, but none of the responsibilities. I think it's beggars belief. And I have to say, I was in a library yesterday, just anecdotally.
Were you?
And I did. I often, sometimes, when I'm not watching raccoons and at 5 a.m. And there were 3 copies of Spare, and I thought, people aren't renting it out. It's very available, that book.
I'm amazed it's even in a library. Goodness gracious. Well, we'll talk some more about Meghan. We'll talk some more about the car-friendly Keir Starmer coming up in a little while. Charlie, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Also, of course, lots of your messages coming through. You can keep voice notes coming as well. 0344 499 1000. Kemi Badenoch coming up later on in the show. We'll be talking to her. Also, of course, we'll be bringing you the latest news from Rachel Reeves and the freebie baskets at Downing Street. If you want any freebies, just ask Rachel. This is Talk. We'll be back after the news.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sent his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not strong...
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to very nearly 3 minutes past 7. The sun is up, but it's very hazy out there. We were told it might be one of the hottest weeks of the year coming up, and it might be the hottest March since 1910 or something ridiculous. That could well be, but it didn't feel like it this morning, I can tell you that. Coming up later on in the show, we're joined by Kemi Badenoch. So I've had an idea, because this is your show, because it's all about common sense. It's all about what you think about the politicians of this world. It's not just what I think. I'm not going to sit here preening myself and thinking, let me ask a really cool gotcha question and make sure that I get myself into the papers. That's not what I do, right? What I want to do is get your questions to her. So when you have a question, if you can think of one that you'd like to ask the Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch, when she comes in, right on this show, here's what you do. You send it to us. You can text it to 87222. You can call in and mention it on a voice note, 03444991000. We'll play it out to her. And if we like it, you will join the merry throng of the home of common sense, and you will be part of this show, because that's what we care about, that's what we want. We've got lots of you giving us information about potholes ever since Keir Starmer claimed that yesterday he wants to be the friend of the motorist. He wants to drive down the cost of motoring. I don't think so. Are you having a laugh, mate? I mean, the cost of driving cars now is so much when it comes to road tax, when it comes to petrol, when it comes to repairs, when it comes to insurance, when it comes to almost every aspect. ULEZ fines, bus lane fines, parking tickets, all the rest of it. This government, and no government, has been the friend of the motorist. So if that's what Keir Starmer thinks he's going to do, I think he's got another think coming. We're going to talk about Rachel Reeves, of course. Not only did she admit to taking 2 freebie tickets to the Sabrina Carpenter show at the O2, it now turns out she got more free tickets because a Freedom of Information request from the Daily Mail has uncovered that she got 2 free tickets worth £276 to the National Theatre to watch a bit of Oscar Wilde. Nice work if you can get it. She's not spending much time in her office, is she? 0344 499 1000. Also, we're going to talk about Heathrow. There could be legal action coming Heathrow's way from an awful lot of airlines who are particularly perturbed about the fact that it cost them an absolute bleeding fortune thanks to their ridiculous decision to lock down and shut down the airport for nearly 24 hours, which it turns out now they didn't have to do. And we'll also talk about Meghan Markle, and we'll also talk about the state pension as well, because the future of that looks a bit uncertain. The triple lock, for the first time, is beginning to look as though it might not exist very, very soon. And also, MPs have given themselves yet another pay rise. Marvellous, isn't it? 0344 499 1000. Benedict Spencer's here. We'll be talking to him shortly. This, of course, is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. And just before we get to Benedict's and the new word that we've got for the Labour Party, slave labour, because it's all over the front page of the Daily Mail, of course. It's all about solar panels and Ed Miliband and China. Neil from Peterlee says, Mike, they are completely screwing the car owners. My road tax went from £30 a year to £190. Goodness gracious me. Phil from Newcastle says the last thing I'd want if I owned a garage is Starmer popping in telling me how he's going to stop people coming in for repairs caused by potholes. And Don in Chelmsford says, Mike, last year a lot of potholes were filled in along certain roads. Then we found out that a bike race was taking place and the repaired roads were on the route. Needless to say that all the other potholes are still gaping and getting deeper. So they've fixed the potholes for a cycling race, but they won't fix the potholes for the actual residents of an area. And one from Tony in Barrow in Furness. Mike, really, Starmer has just heard our roads are full of potholes. Does he not drive in this country? No, of course he doesn't. He goes everywhere in a private jet, or the train. He likes to do that, doesn't he? You never see him in a car. I don't think I've ever seen him getting out of a car, actually. That's a bit weird. I wonder why. Maybe he's got a phobia of cars. 0344 499 1000. Let's talk to Benedict Spence, of course, Conservative commentator. Benedict, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, very well indeed. I mean, this idea that Keir Starmer is going to be the sort of friend of the motorists when every government, I think, since the year dot has pretty much milked motoring and milked taxes on motorists for the rest of time. I mean, the amount of money that motorists generate is in the sort of tens of billions, isn't it, every year?
It is, and we've got, your audience understands the way politicians think about motorists is, well, they have to get from A to B, even if the potholes are there. That's not going to stop them from going. So, why should I prioritise this? Yeah. Sadly, that is the attitude of politicians in this country. If you've got no choice over something, they will not lift a finger actually to intervene on your behalf. because they know that people are in a very difficult position. Millions of people, as much as Sadiq Khan and most of the Labour Party would like us all to use public transport or just not travel anywhere at all, millions of people still use their cars to get to work, to do the school run, to do all the basic things that people have to do in a modern functioning society. As much as Labour would like us to not be a modern functioning society, that is how it is.
Right.
But because of that, they are not going to actually intercede and do this. And local councils aren't either. The government say that they're giving out 500 million or whatever it is to fix the potholes. The councils, they just take the cash and they spend it on other things because they're under no impetus to actually spend the money on the potholes. It really is a very good summary of the state of British politics, that the roads are falling apart and nobody is incentivized to do anything about it.
Right. But there is something about this, and you and I haven't had a chance to talk about this recently, but there's something about, I thought of this the other night. Britain's sort of becoming a bit of a failed state, isn't it? I mean, it's getting to the place where hardly anything works. It's the kind of thing where when I was a child, we'd go on holiday to sort of parts of Europe, and you'd think, wow, this place is a bit run down, and it's a bit manky, and it's a bit, messy, and there's bins everywhere, there's stray cats running about, and nobody's really driving cars, and there's holes all over the roads. That's what it feels like now.
Do you remember you probably won't, a couple of years ago we were having a discussion about the state of this country, and I, slightly flippantly, I admit, compared it to Lebanon in the speed at which how badly it was getting. And you and I both said, well, it's not quite that bad. And yet, at the same time, you sort of look at the speed at which things are getting bad and you think, I wouldn't rule it out over the next sort of 20, 30 years. We've got sectarian problems, we've got all sorts of issues. And as you say, it's the basic functions of the state just aren't working.
No.
What does that sound like?
And also,
exactly.
We all remember that terrible explosion in Beirut where this, warehouse just blew up out of nowhere. Suddenly, last Friday, we've got an electricity substation which feeds power to the biggest airport in Europe, blowing up and shutting the airport down. You kind of go, well, that sounds a bit like Lebanon, actually, doesn't it?
I mean, Rupert Lowe, the Reform MP, had this very issue where he discovered that I think there was a ship that was carrying sort of however many 100 tons of nitrogen fertilizer, which was the same stuff that did blow up in Beirut. And he was asking all sorts of questions like, oh, hang on, how did this get here? How long does it have to stay here? Who's in charge here? You're right. When you have those basic sort of health and safety issues, I'm not talking about pernickety stuff like you have to wear a yellow tabard when you're crossing the road. Basic sort of, there's a lot of explosives here, or there's a power station here and it affects half of London. That kind of is Lebanon's territory, I think.
It really is, absolutely right. And let's talk about Ed Miliband now, because he's on the front page of the Daily Mail. I quite like this idea. We've got a new name for the Labour Party. It's called Slave Labour, because basically he's very happy to bring in solar panels from China to put on the top of schools. Nobody's very sure if it's a good idea. They keep saying to us it's a great idea because it will cut the school electricity bill and they'll be able to reinvest that money into education. Well, we'll see if that happens. But basically, Labour will turn a blind eye to slavery, it says in the Daily Mail, if it blocks a bid to ban ministers from buying solar panels feared to have been made with forced labour in China. So, I mean, the virtue signalling is sort of off the scale here, but they're always sort of keeping it very quiet.
I mean, I knew Labour was the party of the working man, but I didn't know that this was what they meant. This just seemed a little bit extreme. It's the whole thing about solar panels is, do you know what? I wouldn't mind half as much about the whole solar panel thing if they were being produced domestically. But it's the fact that they're not. It's that China has this huge monopoly, and if we had British companies making them and then we were just putting them on roofs, I think everybody would go, okay, that seems like a useful thing for the economy, and it's a sensible thing to put on your roof. But it's the fact that they are mass-produced in China at dreadful cost to the environment, let's also point out. These things are not sort of wonderfully cleanly created in a lab and stay perpetually good for the environment. They're dreadful. And then, as you say, they're made by people who live in appalling conditions, have no real recourse to human rights or complaints or anything like that. And then, of course, they come here and we tear up great swathes of the countryside to deploy them. Natural habitats, who cares? We have our solar panels.
But this is the thing, and I mean, I've always said, listen, I'm all in favour for an electric revolution. If you can show me a heat pump that's cheaper than what currently is in existence and it's better, fine. I'll buy an electric car if it's cheaper and better. I'll, be more than happy to put solar panels on my roof if it makes my electricity bill come down and it doesn't cost any money. But the trouble is, it's not cheaper, it's not more efficient, and it's not better.
Exactly, and it's enriching people overseas. It's enriching foreign governments, and not even particularly friendly ones in the case of China. And this is the thing: if we're going to have expensive electricity, at least in the short term before bills come down, we are actually really good at making one thing in this country: nuclear reactors, small modular nuclear reactors. We make them. Other governments are buying them from us. Why aren't we investing in that as a government? Because it's not quite part of the Green Revolution. It doesn't quite fit Ed Miliband's ideology. The Green Party would go mad, all 4 of their MPs or however much, and you can't upset those people. That's the mental approach that we have in this country. It's insane. We have the technology, we have the building capacity, and yet we're buying this stuff made with slave labour from a hostile country.
Yes, I know. Makes absolutely no sense. And in many cases as well, using it as part of what you might call the infrastructure of Great Britain, which has also got its own sort of, national security implications, hasn't it?
Well, we had this with Huawei, didn't we? That, we took them out of the 5G network, which was a sensible thing on the one hand because there were major national security implications. Look, any major company coming out of China is run by the Communist Party.
Right.
There's, they don't even pretend to hide it, really. That's ultimately who they answer to. But the thing, of course, that we did in this country was we finally got round to what the security services were telling us, which is, this is a threat to national security. And they got rid of it, and then they went, right, well, what are we going to use to replace it? Oh, nothing. Because we've completely chained ourselves to the Chinese supply system. Yeah. And that, again, the hilarity of this whole system. We just sort of assume everything will be fine and that the Chinese will be nice and that maybe we can bring them into the Commonwealth of democratic nations. And then when it goes horribly wrong, we just go, well, we probably shouldn't have hitched our wagon to that particular horse. Anybody got any others? No? Oh, well, that sucks, doesn't it?
There you go then, yeah. Let's talk about Rachel Reeves. Big moment for her tomorrow. I mean, many more people now than ever are saying to me, I don't see her lasting. And given what people say about politics and how, I mean, we had Kwasi Kwarteng on yesterday and he said, well, the trouble with Starmer sacking her is if he sacks her, as I know better than anyone, then it looks bad to him as well. But I think it's going to go beyond that point, I think, for Starmer, because she's so useless. She's now under fire yet again today after the free tickets to Sabrina Carpenter. It turns out she's also now had free tickets to the National Theatre. There's clearly a sort of an anger within her own party about what she's doing, and I don't see how she can get up tomorrow and make her spring budget statement anything other than a total and utter disaster.
I think Starmer will hold on to her for as long as he can to use her as a human flak jacket, basically. He will get her to make these very unpopular economic decisions. Unpopular across the board, it might be said, not just with Labour MPs. Right. With lots of Tories and other people as well. He will make her the face of this. But I think you're right. I don't think she lasts more than a year. I think she might make it up to the year mark, because that, as you say, correctly, and as Kwasi Kwarteng said, it does look embarrassing if the Prime Minister has to sack his Chancellor after less than a year, sorry. Even more so, less than a month in the case of Kwasi Kwarteng.
Yes.
But it is embarrassing. It's a bad look. It doesn't install confidence. But having said that, Rachel Reeves isn't really inspiring much confidence either.
Well, she seems to have managed to engage just about every single group and every single organisation and every single individual, and we've all sort of, absolutely and utterly rallied behind hatred of her because she hasn't done anything at all for anyone, apart from, I suppose you might say, some of the public sector workers who got a pay rise out of her.
Yeah, I mean, when the Financial Times and the Guardian, the two papers that were the most vociferous in their support for Labour ahead of the last budget, were both coming out with front pages every single day in the build-up going, oh, we're not sure this is a good idea. That's how you know things are really not going to go very well. If even those two papers are going, this will lead to stagnation and possibly even recession.
Right.
That's how you know you're in that position. But, fair play to her. She ploughed on anyway. I mean, who cares about what, even your own side is saying, right? Because she is the expert, of course, with all those years spent at the Bank of England.
Oh, yes.
And as an economist.
Well, of course, and she also went to London School of Economics to study economics, as you will probably remember. I mean, the Daily Mirror is so confused these days. They ended up putting a front-page story out about Christine Keeler the other day because they thought, there's literally the only story in town is Rachel Reeves and the freebies, but we can't do that. So they put Christine Keeler on the front page, and people were saying, who the hell's this woman? And it's from very long ago. But yeah, very strange. Let's talk about the Islamophobia story as well, just before I let you go. In the Telegraph today, there's an explanation of how it's possible that even you and I might be victims of Islamophobia if we were mistaken for Muslims. Because it could, I mean, you can make some money out of it, possibly. But the definition, as it's going to be defined by Angela Rayner and her draft lawyer squad, is going to be so ridiculous that actually groups who could be perceived as Muslims will be covered by the new definition. So that could obviously include, you know, other ethnic groups like Sikhs, Hindus, Jains and Buddhists. But there's no reason why I couldn't be a self-identified Muslim, or you might decide that you want to convert to Islam, and therefore you could also be a victim.
I mean, very often, very frequently, I exclaim "mashallah," slightly ironically, because, you know, it rolls off the tongue very easily. But, you know, I'm going to use that now. I'm going to get on the grift. This is fantastic, because I've used an Arabic word once or twice. If people have a go at me, I'll say, that could be Islamophobia, and I'm going to do you. Honestly, this whole thing, though, I mean, it's very well documented that this new definition of Islamophobia is just going to curtail free speech, and that's all that it's meant to do. Let's be very clear. When people say that it's about hatred or anything, no, it's not. It's about policing your speech and your thought and preventing you from criticizing not just Muslims, but also the government and its approach to integration and migration and multiculturalism and all of these things. That's what this is about. It's different to anti-Semitism, which has a centuries-long track record of actual horrific violence against the people it's meant to protect. This is a massive catch-all thing to say from the Labour government, you can't criticise us because that makes you a bigot.
Yeah, it is absolutely and utterly nonsensical, isn't it? Completely mad. But it's entirely where we are right now as a country as well, because a country which is failing concentrates on all the wrong things instead of fixing all the right things.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, Lebanon. If you're not allowed to criticise Muslims or anything like that, or you have to have lots of different laws to say you have to be nice to this person, you have to be nice to that person, this person gets a special, you know, category, this person gets a special job. That is quite literally how the Lebanese system works. We have all these different safeguards. Why? Because the state worries that if you don't have these safeguards, they'll start killing each other and being mean to each other. Do we really want to go down that route where we have to legislate, saying to the British people, you have to be nice because we don't trust you if you say something slightly critical?
Exactly right. Absolutely bonkers. Benedict, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator there. One here from Barry, who says, "Morning, Mike. Barry here from Suffolk. But in Holland right now, we're visiting a relative's war grave. He died 80 years ago yesterday. Potholes non-existent. The roads are completely smooth here in Holland, not a pothole in sight. It is very rare to see any road repairs because the road services all appear to be like new. Such a pleasure to drive on Dutch roads." I mean, I don't know what it's like where you are in various different parts of Britain, but right now London is like a sort of building site for the roads. I mean, you go down, you can't go down a road without finding one road that's going off it closed permanently, or those big orange fences up, other roads being dug up, temporary traffic lights all over the place. I mean, it really is quite extraordinary how much is going on. I know that people will say, oh, it's because it's March and, you know, coming near the end of the financial year for the councils, and so they're digging up all the roads to make sure they spend their budgets. Well, it's partly that, but there's more to it, I think. There's a sort of general failing of the infrastructure of this country, a general failing of the administration of the things that we need to use every day, like the streets, like the trains, you know, like the transportation systems in this country, the way that people get around. Wait a minute, Starmer says he's going to bring the cost of motoring down. Yeah, whatever, just like our council tax wasn't going to go up, says Paul. And Tim says, Mike, Rachel Reeves is the gift that keeps on giving, or in her case, taking. And one from Alan in Merseyside: solar panels on roofs look hideous. They spoil the look of the house just to save a few quid. Yeah, I mean, they don't look very nice, do they? That's for sure. Let's get a voice note from Charlie.
So we have to get our cars MOT to make sure they're roadworthy, but where's the roads that are worthy for the cars?
It's a very good question. You should actually get a discount for driving on the roads that we've got at the moment because they're so ropey and hopeless and ghastly and useless. We want to hear from you, though. Don't forget, we're asking for your questions. Kemi Badenoch's on the show later. We want your questions to her, the Leader of the Opposition. What would you ask her? Send them in as a voice note if you wish, or text them to 87222. This is Morning Glory. David Buick coming next.
the body cam cameras at the moment, there will be a facility, I'm sure, that will not just capture that interaction when I arrest you on the street if I'm a police officer, but will also scan your image and tell me exactly who you are. Are you on a watch list or not? So that facility, I'm sure, is coming. You walk through the camera, your face is scanned. If you're not on the watch list, that data is deleted from the database. That's really, really important.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:24. I'm Mike Graham, of course, here all the way through until 10 o'clock. It's the home of common sense, the world headquarters of it, no less. It's where the nation comes to talk. James says, Mike, when 95% of our electricity is produced by wind turbines and solar panels, we will be 95% dependent on China. All need replacing every 15 to 20 years. It's mental beyond belief. Well, this is the other thing that Ed Miliband never mentions, the fact that the shelf life of wind turbines, the shelf life of solar panels is not infinity. You know, they do have to be replaced. They do have to be maintained. The cost of maintaining these things is massive. The cost of replacing them is equally massive. But we never hear about that. Let's talk to David Buick, a man after my own heart. We haven't spoken for a long time, David. I know you're not quite as busy as you once were. Markets commentator at Aquis Exchange. Very good morning to you, sir.
Morning to you, Mike.
Good to see you. Spring statement tomorrow from Rachel Reeves, much anticipated, heavily trailed. She's talking about sacking as many as 50,000 civil servants. I don't think anybody quite believes that. She's going to be struggling to show any signs of positivity for the economy. Even the Bank of England this morning saying that, you know, growth over the past 14 to 15 years has really just been stagnant.
I'm afraid she's in a half Nelson because she's got no headroom at all. That 9.9 billion.
Yeah.
Of course, the cost of borrowing's gone up. It's cost us another £100 billion a year. And she's very much between a rock and a hard place. As we know, there will be no increase in taxation and no increase in public expenditure. So she tells us. And this is not a budget, it's a spring statement. But the fact remains is the books have got to be balanced. And if they're not going to be balanced, I mean, let's face it now, borrowing is now virtually 100% of GDP. Everybody threw their arms up in horror when Germany just announced that they were going to increase their public expenditure in order to meet their defense requirements. Germany is 60% of GDP. So, you know, it's like comparing apples with pears. It makes a huge, huge difference. She's also, of course, as you so rightly pointed out, Mike, in a bit of a bind because of what Andrew Bailey said yesterday, that he is concerned about the UK economy. The Bank of England last week failed to cut interest rates because inflation, I think you'll find out tomorrow, has gone up from 2.5% to 3%. Yeah. And obviously with these tariffs and other things, it's likely to go up even more. One of the things I think has disappointed me is that there's no one in that front bench of the Labour Party or the Labour government that knows anything about business.
Yeah.
And we got off onto a terrible, terrible start in October of last year with the Chancellor and the Prime Minister slugging the country off. And what they just don't understand, Labour, that sentiment plays such a massive role. And if you discourage people by not giving them the incentive to invest in this country, they'll run to the hills. And they did. And as a result of which, of course, we got a mini crisis on our hands. The cost of borrowing went up. Everybody was absolutely terrified. But the one thing that keeps this country going is small businesses. It's not these huge outfits. And the one thing I'd like to see, and I don't think I'm going to see from the Chancellor when she gets to her feet tomorrow, is to encourage small businesses. In other words, to give them tax relief, capital gains tax for small companies, which is absolutely essential. And if you're one of the major financial centres of the world, and we are supposedly still, to still be the only centre that charges the kind of taxation that we simply don't like, which is stamp duty, is utterly ludicrous.
Yes, and they've made stamp duty even more of a burden for first-time buyers as well now, haven't they? And that's the other problem, that, you know, they don't seem to do anything right for small business at all. And we haven't even seen the effects fully of the national insurance hike, the rise in the minimum wage, which is going to affect so many, particularly small businesses that run hospitality, who need, you know, every single penny they can get because they've been squeezed and squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. I just wonder, once April comes in, how much further the economy can tank.
Well, it's the areas that you mentioned, of course. Retail is going to be very badly hit. I mean, it's going to cost, we think Tesco and Marks and Spencer's probably $2 billion a year to the question of their costs over a period of time. And this means that, you know, people are going to be extremely reluctant to hire people. I mean, Dame Jackie Smith was on her feet yesterday together with Rachel Reeves to suggest that they were going to be able to employ 60,000 brickies and sparks during the course of the next 5 years.
Yeah.
I wish them well, because I don't know where they're coming from.
Well, I don't know where they're coming from, but also people who know the business of electricians and bricklayers and builders of all kinds tell me that the amount of money that they're putting out there, supposedly to train people, is nowhere near enough anyway.
Well, I know. I mean, they started talking about a decent salary being £30,000 a year. Well, anywhere north of Watford, that may well be the case. But down here in the south of England, where the population is very heavily centred, £30,000 a year, I'm afraid, is not a living wage for people who aspire to own houses. And this is what Labour wants. They want to sell 1.5 million, or build 1.5 million houses by the end of their duration. It's just simply not going to happen, because we are in a real downward spiral of sentiment, and we saw 0.1% minus for GDP for the month of January, which was very disappointing. And we're going to see, I think, when the OBR gets to its feet, or when Rachel Reeves gives them the content, I think you'll find they'll be halving the level of GDP, perhaps down from 2% to 1%, and even in some cases, people are saying down to 0.75%.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, I was over in Canada Water the other day. They've got a new sort of high-rise flat building going up there, and they've got a little sign up saying, you know, showrooms now open, blah, blah, blah. Flats start at £750,000.
That's a very small market for people, you know, which are in the financial sector. And as you probably read and seen yourself as being one of the best ginned-up people I know in this area, people have been laying people off in the City of London. They are not hiring.
No.
And this looks absolutely brilliant for a lot of people coming in there. But the fact remains, Mike, that it's just not going to work.
No, it really isn't, because there isn't the money, there isn't the liquidity, there isn't the will either to invest, is there? I mean, we keep seeing, I think Santander was the last one to talk about closing down more high street branches. The high street is now becoming a less sort of welcoming place to small business because of the business rates that they get charged. And one of the things, the knock-on effects that people don't see, which we talk about quite a lot on this show, is that young people who are being encouraged to get out and work and not wanting to go on benefits, there's nowhere for them to get a job, because, you know, the old jobs that you and I did, you know, paper rounds or, you know, working in a corner shop under the age of 16, they're not there anymore.
No, that's right, Mike. I'm afraid so. They were 100% right.
So what are we going to do? I mean, how far down do we have to fall before Rachel Reeves is catapulted out of the number 11 Downing Street?
Well, I agree with your previous contributor. It won't be for another year. And, you know, we've just got to hope that perhaps some of the incentives that are going to be put in will help us in the course to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, not much to look forward to, but it's always entertaining knowing what next freebie Rachel will take, because, I mean, perhaps after she's delivered her, maybe she'll go off and see the Mousetrap or something later on in the evening. Good to see you. David, nice to talk to you. 7:32, thank you very much indeed. Loads and loads of you have got things to say about the state of the roads in this country. One from Steve, who says, councils used to employ highway or trench inspectors whose specific job was to drive the road network, get out of their vans and identify potholes. They also checked the utility companies actually reinstated roads properly when they dug them up. These roles have virtually disappeared, and that directly correlates with the appalling state of our roads. I think that's right. And one here from Lorraine on Charlie Mullins, yet another example of two-tier Keir and his attack on free speech. It's not OK for Mullins to make comments, but it's fine for Wes Streeting and Sadiq Khan to make vile comments on Donald Trump and state ULEZ protesters are far-right conservatives. Surely both Khan and Streeting fall well below the standards expected of a minister or a mayor. Or what about a Knight of the Realm? I mean, if they're going to start quizzing people on what they say based on they've got an OBE, so you can't really say it, well, that's not really right. One of these from Lord Damon, he calls himself, in Wigan. Morning, Mike. Great show as always. I did marathons for years when I was younger and in my teens. Great times. However, now I have really bad knees and the lower part of my back has had to be operated on. So now I'm more like Robocop than Iron Man. Have a great day. Yeah, absolutely right. Chris Evans runs a lot of marathons. He's going to come in and talk to us about it coming up in a little while later on in the show because, of course, the story in The Sun this morning saying running marathons basically rots your brain. Seriously, it's a chemical imbalance. That's what I'm talking about. 7:33.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:36. Coming up, we're going to be talking about a great many things with LaDonna Harvey over in the United States of America. She's in the Arizona morning news show, KTAR, in Phoenix. A couple of tweets for you first, though. One from Ian in Hearts. He says, Mike, my daughter was offered some freebie Snow White tickets, but she declined because it's so woke. And crap, by the way, apparently. Dave in Aberdeen says, morning, Mike. Maybe all those losing their jobs at NHS England will be employed by GB Energy, giving Jurgen a workforce at last. Well, most of the people at NHS England are apparently employed in Leeds, so they might have to go up to Aberdeen, even though Jurgen doesn't seem to work up there. And Zoe in Lancashire says, morning, Mike. So building all these new homes for migrants, Labour have no intention of giving these houses to British people. These are Starmer's next voters. Got to keep those migrants sweet. And Andy from Knott says, don't go picking on us triathletes. I'll have you know I'm in peak condition and frequently win triathlons. Darts and dominoes is an endurance event like no other. Yes, absolutely right. Let's talk now, though, to LaDonna Harvey. A couple of stories have crossed the desk this morning. Apparently there was a late-night phone call between Keir Starmer and Donald Trump. This despite the fact that in a leaked WhatsApp message or a Signal message, it turns out that Europe were described as pathetic freeloaders by several people, including Mr. Hegseth, who is, of course, the United States Secretary of State for Defence. He was in a group, Pete Hegseth, with J.D. Vance and Mike Waltz, the National Security Advisor, and Susie Wiles, Donald Trump's Chief of Staff. But they somehow managed to involve a reporter from The Atlantic magazine, the editor-in-chief, actually, of The Atlantic magazine, and they shared some rather top-secret information about what they were going to bomb in Yemen. LaDonna, very good morning to you.
Good morning. Yeah, I alas do not work for The Atlantic and was not privy to that information, but man, what a great day that would be for a reporter. Just, oops, into your email, you're looking at top secret stuff. Fabulous.
Well, I mean, the headline alone is enough to make you smile, because it turns out that the Atlantic editor-in-chief was actually invited into the group by the people who are sitting mainly in the way, and he couldn't quite believe it, because it's a piece here which is the headline on this story is so good. The Trump administration accidentally texted me its war plans. I mean, what a story. You know, you basically couldn't make it up, could you?
No, you sure couldn't. And what a great coup for a reporter. I mean, just to sit there and go, ooh,
yeah.
Well, they goofed, but here I am.
I mean, and Jeffrey Goldberg, who is the guy concerned, apparently when he first got the invitation to join the group, he just assumed it was a spoof. He assumed that basically it was somebody trying to kind of interpret what he knew or try and get out of him some information which might be damaging to him. So he joined it out of curiosity and was rather surprised to find out that all of the people who said they were in it were the real people.
Oh my, it would just be a great day as a reporter, as somebody who does news for a living. That would be like the best day of my life, and I'd be like, you know what, I think I'm retiring now.
Yes. Oh, I know. But can you imagine also as a reporter, you'd be thinking, surely this can't be real. Somebody must be this must be some kind of trap.
Right. Well, and we're trained so hard against, IT incursions that the first thing you would think was, oh, do I just need to get rid of this email? But, once it comes from whitehouse.gov. Yes.
But I suppose more worrying for the people on this side of the Atlantic is the way that it would seem that the Trump administration describes Europe, and certainly European governments, because, of course, Keir Starmer makes out that he's, Donald Trump's best friend. He's very wary of any member of his cabinet saying anything negative about Donald Trump. It's quite funny watching them whenever any cabinet minister goes on TV here, all of whom are on record hating Donald Trump, right, and making anti-Trump statements and saying, and even Starmer himself said that he wouldn't want him round for dinner. They're all briefed to such an extent. Every time they're asked about Donald Trump, they're very polite.
Yes, he's a fine man. Fine man. Any other questions?
I know. Yeah. Obviously, we're working well together and all of this, and it does seem as though the Trump view of Keir Starmer is, just keep him sweet until I can get the second state visit and meet up with the king again.
Possibly. The great thing about Donald Trump, and also the not so great thing about Donald Trump, is you really don't ever know what he's actually doing. You just don't. While he's yammering over here about this, he's working over here on this. Right. And so, you hear words coming out of his mouth like, our relationship has not been good. It's not been good. And it feels like it's a boyfriend negotiating for a better deal from the girlfriend. Right. But I'm not sure what the deal is. And I've never been sure what the deal is.
Right. And that's the other thing he'll do sometimes. He'll say, yeah, he's a great guy. And that's exactly not what he means, but he says it so the guy thinks that he thinks he's a great guy.
The only person that we're not, and again, this is the typical Donald Trump MO. We don't know how he feels about Putin. We don't know how he feels about anybody. Right. Because one minute he says one thing, and then the next minute, oh, I don't know, it's a bad relationship. Right. It's a bad relationship. And then he goes off and makes a deal. Yeah. And so you think, well, was it a bad relationship, or was that a negotiating tactic? Is there something I don't know here?
Exactly. Well, there's people here sort of writing him off already. The usual suspects, I would call them, the Trump haters who didn't like him first time around, didn't like him in between, and now hate him even more. And they're so convinced that he's kind of a pawn for Russia. I wouldn't be at all surprised if we end up doing a deal in Ukraine, which is somehow great for everybody. But we haven't got to the end. I keep saying to people, just wait and see, because at every stage they're critical of Trump, saying he's doing this, he's not talking to Zelensky, he didn't invite him to Saudi Arabia for the round of talks that he had with the Russians, and then suddenly he gets invited to the White House, and then they're going, oh yeah, but then he was horrible to him in the White House. It's just kind of, they move the goalposts all the time, and yet there's a lot more going on now than ever went on with the Biden administration.
And I'm not, and again, I'm not sure what it is, and I'm not sure I don't think anyone is. until the news breaks
Right.
and they say, oh, well, here's what we've worked out in Ukraine, or here's what we've worked out with Russia.
Yeah.
You know, the thing that I do is I always live in hope. I'm an optimist, despite all evidence to the contrary. I really am an optimist. And, you know, ultimately, I think things have a tendency to work out.
Yeah.
Maybe not for the best in the moment, but perhaps there's a future game, and that's what I'm hoping for. That there is something that will stop Putin from a European expansion without actually triggering World War III.
Yes.
I would like to see that happen.
Well, that would be nice, wouldn't it? Speaking of World War III, I presume there's going to be guns at dawn and duelling and all sorts of things going on in Montecito. Gwyneth Paltrow seems to have decided to take on Meghan Markle in the cooking in your own kitchen stakes.
Oh my God, I can't think of two more self-absorbed and uninteresting people to teach me how to eat.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, have you seen me? I understand food a
Yeah.
lot.
Right. Yeah. And you can also.
I don't need you to teach me how to cook and put flowers on stuff.
Right. And this is how to present it.
I want to eat it.
I know. It's pathetic, isn't it? It's really pathetic. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Donna, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Donna Harvey, the Arizona Morning News star of KTAR in Phoenix there. A lot of you getting in touch on all manner of things this morning. We're talking potholes. We're talking Rachel Reeves and more freebies. Rachel Reeves and the economy. We're talking migrants coming up next, of course, because Stephen Wolfe is here. This from Bill in Cheshire on Reeves and the economy. As she's boxed herself in and all the economic data is looking bad, I forecast she will just shoot the messenger. She will downgrade the OBR's influence and change or massage the data with which growth and debt are measured. I wouldn't be surprised at that, actually. And Carol in Shoreham by Sea has got something really controversial to say. She says, beards are horrible. They make most men look older and sometimes scruffy and grubby. I much prefer Charlie Rowley clean shaven. Have a good day. Well, I mean, not everyone would agree with that, Carol, but I do. Thank you. 7:44.
Easter and Christmas and other events in the Christian calendar, they are national public holidays in a nationally constitutionally Christian country, and they are part of our national tradition and our culture. And if you want to be inclusive, bringing people of all faiths and none into that national history and culture is the most inclusive thing you can do.
They don't want inclusivity, they don't want diversity and stuff. The whole idea is to break down British culture and values and British connection with the people.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Judy Hartley-Brewer will be here, of course. And this from Stephen, Kimberley, Nottinghamshire. Mike, I bought a brand new Nissan Ariya in September 2024, which now needs a new front near side shock absorber at 600 quid. Luckily covered by the warranty. It will be off the road for 2 days. I've only done 4,000 miles, and the dealer says it happens frequently. Well, of course, Keir Starmer will play that clip for you later. Decided to go to Halfords yesterday to be taught a lesson about potholes. Let's get a voice note from John.
Hi, Mike. This is John in Texas. Maybe they could take all of those young, able-bodied people that are on benefits and put them to work, restart national service, and then put them to work filling potholes and cleaning up those areas that need trash bins emptied. Here in Texas, we have most of our major cities, we can call 311, which is the non-emergency number, and our potholes, if we identify them to the city, they'll get them fixed within 3 days in most places. So it can work.
Right.
Thanks. Great show.
Wow. John in Texas. Sounds a bit like Elon Musk. Was it Elon Musk? John, we must hear back from you. You've got a very good voice. Very interesting. Morning, Mike. There must be 22 billion black potholes, says Brian. Hello, Mike. I've lived in Spain, says John, since 1991. I've never seen a pothole in any part of the country. Absolutely. And one from Tash in Sussex says, morning, Mike. Love the show. You and your entire team put on every day. Ray the roads. Our roads have more holes than a Tetley tea bag. Very true. Almost as full of holes as our border force, which is also completely and utterly useless, it has to be said. Stephen Wolfe is here, Director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. Stephen, very good morning to you.
Very good morning, Mike.
I mean, I see that we've passed yet another milestone in the migrant stakes. We've now got a record number again of migrants crossing the Channel, 5,847 since the start of the year. This is no joke now, is it?
No, it's quite stunning, actually. I was just looking at the numbers this morning, Mike, just to give you an analogy. The numbers are up 33% from the same period.
Wow.
Last year. I mean, we had about 4,306, roughly, thereabouts.
Yeah.
And we're now up to 5,748. And looking out the window, as you can see, and your friends are watching today, it's a good day.
Yeah.
It's a nice summer's day, and that's why they're coming. We've had some good, pleasant weather. But the reality is, if we're up 33% now, then we're more likely to maintain that throughout the year in the quiet period. And that would put us towards more than 50,000 arriving this year, which is around 2.5 billion just to house those people who've arrived this year alone. Those are stunning numbers, Mike. This is more than a flood now. This is becoming a hurricane of people coming across the water.
It really does. And here's a question for you, because I couldn't get an answer yesterday. This was in the Times when it said that basically it looks as though now Starmer, despite saying that he was going to get rid of migrant hotels before he was elected, of course hasn't, and it now turns out that the migrant hotels will be used even longer and even for more migrants in the coming years. But apparently the cost of housing a migrant in one of these hotels was £17,000. And this is a figure from the Institute for Fiscal Studies. It's now gone up to £41,000 a year. How has that happened?
Well, all I can say is that when you look at the contracts, and I haven't seen the contracts for the new period, but the first set of contracts that were given out for a 10-year period had a clause in there that said, yes, we're going to pay you X amount of pounds per person in a hotel, but, and here's the important part, if we can't, if there are more people coming in, and you no longer have the capacity and have to go out and get more hotels from others, then you can ask us for more money.
Yeah.
And that's why it's jumped. Because at the end of the day, you and I know there are only a certain number of hotels these people could have.
Right.
So they had to go out and subcontract it for others. And this is why I'm saying there is a mass industry that are supporting the numbers of people coming across the channel, because there's so much money to be made in this.
There really is. And that's why I know, and you know, that they're never going to smash the gangs, because that's a bit like saying we're going to take a war on drugs and we're going to take the war on drugs to the traffickers. You know, the result being there are more drugs in the country than there's ever been before, because there's so much money in it. people are willing to risk their lives to do this kind of stuff because they're becoming millionaires.
Oh, absolutely. There's two levels of millionaires now being created. Obviously, there's the millionaires related to the people smugglers at the top end, not just those who are just helping them cross from France to the UK. But there's a new group of millionaires who are related to the criminal gangs that are now forming in this country on the back of it.
Yes.
There are plenty of warnings that are coming out from our security services, our gang-connected police officers who are understanding what gangs are all about. That there is a real surge in criminality connected to this.
Yeah.
And that's what's really deep concerning. It's not just a breakdown of our society that's being caused by the criminality. It's the wealth that is also being built behind it. And that just accelerates the big people who are bringing in more and more of these individuals.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, all sorts of stories anecdotally come into us every day. We have a migrant of the day section. You know, there's a couple of stories I haven't talked about, but there's certainly one that we mentioned last week where they were looking into the numbers of sort of sponsored visas that were being called in from various places. And there was one particular kebab shop, I think, in Birmingham, where they had sponsored something like 600 supposedly, you know, skilled worker visas for people to come into the country. And you're thinking, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to work out there might be something dodgy going on there. You know, 600 people coming to work in a kebab shop because they're specially skilled. And then the other one that I haven't mentioned yet, which happened over the weekend, was up in Sheffield. I don't know if you saw this story. There were massive street fights going on a few days ago. But they weren't street fights being held by people because they were just criminals. These were Eritreans, apparently. Two groups of Eritreans, one group in support of the government, another group who are against the government, fighting each other on the streets of Sheffield in Britain. And you're thinking, what on earth is going on?
Well, I couldn't agree more. This is where you get the breakdown of society. This is where Alan Betts, the professor in London, has warned that we would get low-level forms of civil war. This is the concerns that people have been raising for a long time. When you bring in mass numbers from different countries, you're bringing in those who oppose each other. You already understand that we have issues between Kurds and Iraqis that are over here. You've got issues between Iranians and Iraqis that are over here.
Yeah.
We've got Pakistanis and Indians in...
There's gang wars in North London between Turks and Kurds, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And most of those will be related to drugs and related to criminality. Because when those people come over here on boats, they've all got to pay back their people smuggling masters who have a control over their families back home with threats if they don't pay. What's one of the easiest ways of being able to get work in this country? It's either through the black market, through drugs or criminality. That's how they start. They're not all coming in as surgeons, doctors, and scientists creating the next billion-pound company. I'm afraid that's laughable to think that. So they do start at the bottom end because they're not able to work in our economy because they're not allowed to be here.
Right. And that's the point. But then, again, all of these kind of various sort of red walls, or if you want to call them, you know, red lines that supposedly existed, such as, you know, all illegal migrants don't get benefits. Well, yes, they do. It turns out that, you know, they get loads of free stuff. And then when they get accepted as an asylum seeker, even before the claim has been made, they're able to get benefits. And that seems to be the rule of thumb now. And we've got, I think it's over 1 million immigrants on benefits now.
Absolutely. I'm surprised it's only just 1 million, to be honest, quite frankly, when we look at the numbers. I mean, since 2000, we've had nearly 1.3 million asylum applications that have come in. We've had the illegal migrants coming in. And we also know that we have the overstayers who claim to be here either as a student or on holiday and actually never go back. And they know that they're never going to be returned. And when we talk about the war on drugs analogy, there's never really been a true war on drugs. We never really had a true war on stopping the gangs or stopping the boats, because if we did, you'd make it incredibly difficult for those coming here and incredibly difficult for the gangs to be able to make a profit.
Well, exactly right. And you would actually make some inroad into actually stopping them, as opposed to encouraging more of them to come.
Well, our legal system is designed to ensure that the people smugglers have a huge marketing advert for all of those people that they're saying come here, because it's saying you get here, you'll never leave. That is the greatest advert any gangster, any people smuggler, any illegal migrant controller can have. And he's saying, thank you very much, the British common law. I enjoy Article 8. It means that once again, I can make millions on the backs of people.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's quite extraordinary what's going on. Stephen, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Stephen Wolfe there, from the Director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. Absolutely extraordinary stuff going on. As I say, new record numbers crossing the channel, 5,847 since the start of the year, and this year alone. And under Labour since July the 4th, of course, of last year. It's incredibly huge. The numbers have gone up under Labour as opposed to down. I don't know what you would say about that. Steve in Cumbria says, morning, Mike. Why is it we live in a third world country, yet we also live in the 5th richest country in the world? Something doesn't add up, quite literally. Well, you're absolutely right. Something doesn't add up. And Ronald says, if the government are going to get rid of 50,000 civil servants, why don't they start with their own front bench? Well, that's quite a good idea as well. We will be coming up with all sorts of questions for Kemi Badenoch. She's on the show a little bit later on. We've got many questions from you, so we don't really need any more, but if you really feel the need to send some in, you can text them to us at 87222. You can leave us a voice note as well, which we can play to her, 0344 499 1000. Coming up in the next hour, Ryan Saby's here, Deputy Political Editor at The Sun. We'll get the latest from him on what Rachel Reeves is likely to do in her budget statement tomorrow, the spring budget statement, in which she's likely to say that she's going to create growth and make money for people, and so working people can have more money in their pockets, and she'll come out with all the usual platitudes, but none of it, of course, will be convincing. None of it will convince the Bank of England that there's going to be any growth. They're saying there hasn't been any real growth in this country for 14 to 15 years. That includes, of course, all the years of Tory government as well. So I'm not giving them a pass, but Richard Fuller, Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, is on, so maybe I'll ask him about that. Also, of course, keep your voice notes coming in. Ross Clark's going to join us. He's written a column about how Rachel Reeves needs to cut even more than we think. And Chris Evans will be here to talk about why he thinks it's wrong to say marathons rot your brain. He runs a lot of them.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. The sun is up. The sky is not blue, I have to say. The sky looks a bit hazy. I can't really see across London because it looks that bad. But it is supposed to be rather warm coming up today and tomorrow. So we'll see how that all goes. We've got lots to talk about this morning. Rachel Reeves back in the bad stuff because she's taken yet more free tickets, this time to the National Theatre, to see The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde, it would appear, on December the 27th. Nice work if you can get it, I suppose. Meanwhile, tomorrow is the big day. B-Day, I suppose you might call it, for Rachel Reeves. Budget Day. She's going to be announcing the spring budget, in which she's going to try and stimulate some growth in this country, even though the Bank of England say growth is really something that we haven't had for a good many years, all the way back to probably the beginning of the Tory government, for heaven's sake, back in 2010. So we're not really in a position to argue that growth is coming, and she's not really in a position to make it happen, is she? 0344 499 1000. Kemi Badenoch coming to the show a little bit later on. We've got lots of questions for her. You can ask questions too if you wish to. Send them in to us at 87222 or send us a voice note as well. Keir Starmer, meanwhile, has been out and about making out he's going to be the friend of the motorist, which of course has created hilarity around the country, because the one thing that this government and many other governments have done is tax the motorist absolutely to the nth degree. Road tax, fuel tax, parking tax, you know, what do you call it, diesel tax, all sorts of tax when you park your car if you don't actually have an electric car. Every single thing that you do as a driver is taxed. Every single thing that you do as a driver has gone up in price. Keir Starmer says he's going to fix the potholes, first of all, with 1.6 billion quid, and then he's going to be driving down the cost of motoring. Can you imagine Keir Starmer actually driving a car? Imagine being stuck behind him. He probably drives at 20 miles an hour everywhere, puts his indicator on about 200 yards before he turns left, you know, then decides actually he doesn't want to turn left, wants to turn right. And then he turns right, realises he's gone the wrong way, has to do a U-turn in the middle of the road and come back the other way. And then he has to stop and pick up some people. Then he stops at the wrong place, doesn't think he can do it. I mean, he'd be the most indecisive driver, the most useless driver, I think, of all time. Can you imagine? 0344 499 1000 is the number. We've got lots to do. Richard Fuller, Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, is going to be coming on. Also, Heathrow, as I predicted yesterday, is facing some lawsuits now, because when they switched off all the power, because they did, it wasn't that it went off automatically, they caused an awful lot of financial damage, not just to airlines, not just to other tourists and other travellers, but also to the whole economy as well. We got record migrant numbers, MPs have got themselves another pay rise, and of course they've found some more life on Mars, they reckon. We'll bring you more on that. Also, we're talking marathons. Chris Evans will be coming in at 8:30 to talk to us about that. According to a new study, it rots your brain if you run too many of them. That would explain quite a lot. This is Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. Let's get it on. Let's kick things off in this hour with Richard Fuller, Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury. Richard, a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good to see you. The Bank of England's chief exec, Andrew Bailey's come out today and basically said we haven't had any growth in this country for about 14 or 15 years. So he's saying not only have we not got any now, but we haven't had any for the whole time that the Conservatives were in. What do you got to say for that?
Well, look, I think Andrew Bailey was right in his diagnosis and right when he looked at the two things that are most important to get growth. So, and it's not just the UK, Ms. Graham, it's across Western developed countries, going back to the financial crisis of 2007, 2008, that any attempts by governments of whatever stripes to stimulate growth haven't occurred. And in the UK, even though we were higher than most European countries in terms of our growth over the period, that was largely because we had an increase in population because of immigration, and that has some other issues that obviously you and others have pointed to a long term. So what Mr. Bailey said positively was a government that wants to achieve growth should focus on making sure that free enterprise has the money it needs to invest and that we reduce trade barriers. Sadly, it doesn't sound those are two things that the Chancellor feels are important.
No, I mean, I'm not really looking forward to the spring budget statement, I have to be honest with you, because I can't really see what news she can give us which is in any way good, because she hasn't really got anywhere to go. She claims that she's going to fire a load of civil servants, but I spoke to one of the bosses of a civil service union this week, and he seems very relaxed about it, which led me to believe that it probably isn't going to happen. And some people have said that even if you talk about a 15% cut in numbers over 5 years, it's only 3% a year.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I mean, tomorrow Rachel Reeves is going to try and do two things. First of all, her line is going to be, not me, Gov. She's going to blame the inheritance, she calls it, from the last Conservative government, and then she's going to say all terrible things that are happening around the world, isn't it awful? That's not right. The reason why businesses have made decisions to cut back on staff, to make sure they can't invest in their businesses for the future, is because of the decisions she made, her choices in her budget last year, including the job-destroying jobs tax of national insurance. And so she's going to try to say that was what she wanted to do. And then she's going to try and find ways to fit within her rules. Remember, she changed the rules last October to be easier for her to fit within them. But even so, she's probably going to be found that she's been caught short because of the impact of the jobs tax and other things. And so she's going to try and say, well, I'm going to cut things here or there. But as you rightly say, the magnitude of the reductions, the magnitude of the savings are going to be numbers on a piece of paper. She's not going to talk about the details about how she's really going to achieve them.
No, indeed. And I mean, if you were running a book on it and you were going to be asked how soon before she says the words 22 billion black hole, I dare say it would be within the first sort of 2 or 3 minutes, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think people should get their emergency budget bingo cards out and sort of see that the things that she talks about. So there'll be the 22 black hole, there'll be Liz Truss, there'll be global events, there'll be Donald Trump, but she won't mention him by name. But yeah, get your bingo cards out. But the truth of this emergency budget spring statement, whichever you want to call it, is that businesses in my constituency and across the country are already making the decisions as a consequence of her choices last October. And their decisions are they can't afford to invest in that new production line. They can't afford to open extra shops. They can't afford to give pay rises to their workforce as much as they would like to give, because all that money has been taken by Rachel Reeves and put into her own black hole.
Well, exactly
that
right.
she's created because of the decisions she made last year.
Well, that's the problem. I mean, do you have any...
the key...
Sorry, go on.
No, I think one of the things, and people always say about the Conservative Party what lessons we've learned, and it's important we know. One of the things, and this is, again, just go back to Mr. Bailey's speech, and I'm not a natural, my line, I mean, he's a bit different from me really on politics, but the thing that I think I took great comfort from was his reaffirmation of the importance of enterprise and his extolling of the virtues of free trade. We as a country have got to start to love, again, those entrepreneurs who take risk, who invested some of their own money and maybe get some people to help them start their business and then grow their business and make wealth that means more jobs for people, means more exports for the country, and means ultimately more taxes for public services. And the Conservative Party needs to reassert its belief and its faith in enterprise. And I think you said earlier on you've got Kemi Badenoch coming on. I'm sure she's exactly going to reassert that message. That's where the Conservative Party has got to learn the lessons about how you get growth for the future, which is it isn't in the hands of a socialist chancellor. It's in the many, many, many hands of the innovators, inspired people, next generation of people who want to start a business, take advantage of the opportunities the world has, and government should have their backs, not be standing on them.
Yeah, absolutely right. Richard, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Richard Fuller, Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury. We had Labour Cabinet Minister on yesterday, of course. We have invited Labour on as well today because, of course, we are nothing if we're not fair, which is what we do all the time here at the Independent Republic of Mike Graham, now known as Morning Glory. We've been doing it for a long time. We know what we're doing. It's 11 minutes past 8. Let's talk to... Oh, tell you what, let's get a voice note from JB on migrants.
Hi, Mike. JB from Kidderminster here. I just wondered if during the Second World War we managed to keep the Germans from invading our shores, how come we can't stop these dinghies from landing on our beaches now? Do we need to man the beaches ourselves and turn them round ourselves? Because it seems that the government are totally unable and incompetent at even trying to do so.
Well, certainly Border Force have got no clue how to do it. Certainly people have offered to do that in the past, but obviously they're very worried in case it all goes a bit wrong and a bit sort of, gets a bit vigilante-like, which is not what they want. But, yeah, I mean, and eventually there will come a time, I think, when people start taking the law into their own hands and going down onto beaches to, shall we say, discourage people from arriving here for free. And staying forever. Let's talk, though, to Ryan Saby, Deputy Political Editor at The Sun, because there's a great big spread in The Sun today on pages 8 and 9, in which Keir Starmer vows to be the friend of the motorist. He vows to drive down costs for motorists. It says Keir hits the road. Let's have a quick look at how he hit the road yesterday to visit Halfords.
This is pothole damage. So you can see it, yeah. Hit a pothole and it just ruins the sidewalk.
I hit a pothole. If it's strong enough to break basically, yes, it will be.
I've lost at least 3 tyres down to potholes, twice in 2 months.
First thing we need to do is get a bit of accountability into it to know which councils are doing what where, how many times they're filling in holes, so we can get a bit of data on that, which we haven't got. But what we're announcing today is to incentivise them to get on and do it.
We obviously have customers day in, day out coming in with the same issues, and I think having spoken to a man who can actually, bring change and make something happen about it, that can only be a positive thing for him to come in and see it in real terms.
I had to change all of my tyres at the end, and it's quite nice that we see things done to fill in the potholes at the moment.
Why is he wearing a suit and tie in Halfords? Nobody does that. What's he doing? And why does he want data? What data does he want? I've seen a pothole. I saw another one after that, and then a third one. That's 3 potholes then. Is that what he called data? I mean, seriously. Ryan, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
I'm not sure. I mean, it's a great idea, this, of driving down the cost of motoring. I'm not sure I buy it entirely from Mr Starmer. I mean, pretty much every politician in the history of politics has gone after motorists and milked them for every single penny they can get from them.
Yeah, no, that's right. Whether it's fuel duty, that's the thing that really that winds motorists up. But what Keir Starmer was trying to do yesterday was trying to look at motoring in the round and how much it costs drivers, when they're going about their day-to-day business, whether it's taking the kids to school or driving long distance if you're working up and down the country. One thing he was trying to get across, as well as that pothole message, was trying to look at insurance, saying that was too high. Those premiums seem to have gone up for everyone. That pump finder, the pump watch system that has been in and around discussions around Whitehall over recent years hasn't quite come to fruition just yet. But he was sort of talking about that in the round as well. And one other thing that he really wanted to focus on was those parking charges that you get. You go into one of those car parks, you can't quite see the sign, you're timed it, you may spend an extra minute in there and you get slapped with a big fine. And he seemed to make the point that actually people are just fed up with all these things that are driving up the cost of motoring, and it's time to actually to act on that.
Yeah, I mean, an awful lot of people have been getting in touch with me today about the cost of their car tax, which has rocketed over the last since the last budget. And James says, "He's so glad to hear Starmer is now a friend of the motorist. I can't wait to see my £735 a year car tax coming down and the roads to be drivable again. I won't hold my breath," because a lot of people tell me, from my own experience, I know it to be true as well, that most other European countries, the roads are beautiful. You go to Ireland, the roads are lovely. Spain, France, the Netherlands, we heard earlier on, Scandinavia, all the countries are great. I was in Montenegro last year. The roads were fantastic. I know a lot of them benefited from money from the EU, which we didn't benefit from because we were considered to be too wealthy a country. But, I mean, there's something going horribly wrong with our roads.
I think this is one of the things that Downing Street have tried to tap into over recent weeks and months. They've realised that a lot of money is going to town halls. Councils are being given tens of millions of pounds, hundreds of millions of pounds to actually fix the roads. But there didn't seem to be any real accountability to find out whether they were actually doing it or not. So I think one thing that Downing Street have said, that if you want to carry on getting money, you actually have to prove that you're actually getting on with the job and filling in those potholes. And if you don't, we're going to take that money away. So there is a clear parameter there for town halls to get on with the job.
Yeah, absolutely right. Let's talk about Rachel Reeves. Big day for her tomorrow. Budget statement time. There's not likely to be much in there for us to enjoy, I don't think. She's claiming that she's going to make cuts to public services. What are you hearing is the latest from the Department of the Treasury?
Yeah, I think Whitehall should brace itself for cuts across the board. There's going to be a couple of obviously those protected departments, whether it's the Ministry of Defence, that they will be fine. But it's those other departments, those secretaries of state, those cabinet ministers who have been looking through their accounts and trying to offer up suggestions to the Treasury to say, well, perhaps we can cut a few pounds here or there. And then we had Bridget Phillipson yesterday, her department putting up some suggestions of maybe trying to end those free school meals, those universal free school meals for primary school pupils that are just so politically, they just don't work, because it would be seen as such a bad move that they think the Treasury will say, hang on a minute, you can't do that, you can't touch that. So they're trying to offer, some departments seem to be playing it a little bit cheeky. They're offering up suggestions that they know the Treasury won't touch. So it's going to be a difficult day for a lot of people in Whitehall tomorrow when they see those budgets slash. They've been trying to work up proposals of trying to bring down their budgets by 5%, 7%, 11% over recent weeks and months. So let's just see how tomorrow goes. But it's going to be difficult, because that growth forecast is going to look like it's growth for this country is going to come down from 2% to 1% for this year. It's going to be a difficult day for Rachel Reeves.
Yeah, I should imagine so. Ryan, thanks very much indeed. Ryan Saby, Deputy Political Editor at The Sun. Maybe she just enjoy herself in the evening, going out to some free concerts or something like that. Doug says, morning, Mike. Now Rachel Reeves has been to a few concerts. Does that make her a singer? Yeah, very possibly. Coming up, we're going to talk about the cuts that she needs to make, because Ross Clark is here. He's written a piece on page 10 of The Sun this morning, all about exactly why she has to cut more, not less, from the budget.
This is a 6-foot-tall transgender woman, patient X, they're calling him, and I won't get sacked for misgendering somebody, who was admitted to hospital with, get this here, a urinary problem. Okay, so one of the possible treatments for that person was the fitting of a catheter. Okay, so let's just think about how important biological sex is in that instance.
Good point. You couldn't make that bit up of the story, really, could you?
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. Julie Hartley-Brewer here for you after that, taking you through until 1 o'clock. Then it's Ian Collins, then it's Jeremy Kyle, then it's Kevin O'Sullivan. Fantastic day of news again coming up over the course of the next few hours. Ross Clark joins us now. He's got a big piece on page 10 of The Sun. Rachel Reeves' cuts aren't a return to austerity. She needs to act more, not less. This is despite the BBC saying it's a return to austerity, Ross. I mean, for heaven's sake, are you suggesting the BBC have got it wrong?
Good morning, Mike. Yes, it seems that when any government proposes to cut so much as a bean from public expenditure, it gets accused of austerity. Austerity has just become a sort of term for any government policy which involves a deficit of less than £100 billion a year. I mean, look, this is the problem. For 22 years, no government of any colour in Britain has managed to balance the books. It's been piling on debt, every year on year. Situated this year, and for every year in the past sort of 20 years, government's been taking in about £9 in revenue for every £10 it spends. And you can't just go on like that. We've got to a situation now where government's spending over £100 billion a year just servicing debt, on the interest on the debt that it owes. And, something has got to give. And it's no good just sort of, messing about at the edges, sort of removing free tampons from schools or something, which is one of the suggestions which, has been, the government might possibly do this week.
Right.
It's going to require sort of benefits to be frozen for a couple of years, just like tax thresholds have been frozen, including the state pension, I'm afraid. It's going to require, that sort of £7 billion a year we spend supporting illegal migrants.
Yes.
That could be chopped, and all round, really, we have got to start living within our means.
Yes.
Because otherwise we end up with national bankruptcy, and Rachel Reeves will be forced, like her predecessor Dennis Healey in the 1970s, to go to the IMF and beg for a bailout.
Well, exactly right. There's plenty of places.
Humiliation.
Well, exactly. There's plenty of places we could teach them to cut, but of course the bleeding hearts of the BBC and various other charitable groups and all sorts of organisations, which love giving our money away to people, will be bleating and squealing and screaming that, we're horrible, they're nasty, we can't be doing this. People, I mean, look at all the people who are up in arms about some of the benefits that are going to be cut on the basis that, these are people that need their benefits. Well, they don't all need them, because if you took them away, they'd find something to do. They'd probably go and get a job.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the explosion in disability benefits in the past decade.
Yeah.
I mean, ask yourself, do you really think there has been a genuine rise in people who are too sick to work?
Yeah.
We've got a situation, the UK population ought to be healthier and fitter than it's ever been in the past.
Right.
We've got drugs for mental illness have never been better. The physiotherapy has never been better.
We're a much healthier nation than we've ever been as well.
Well, we ought to be, and yet the bill for disability benefits is sort of galloping upwards, and you think, well, hang on, this is not all genuine. There are people playing the system here, and but whenever government proposes to just trim it, just freeze the benefits, just make it a little bit harder to claim them, you get these backbench Labour MPs of accusing Rachel Reeves that you're kicking away the crutches of the disabled and so on. This is what makes it so difficult for a government to sort of balance the books.
Yeah, exactly right. And it's in the same way that they argue that, the money that we pay to house migrants is saving their lives, and if we didn't do it, they'd all rot and die from, ill health and all the rest of it. It's absolutely bonkers mad.
Yeah, I mean, the essential problem we have is that it is politically much easier to spend money than it is to raise it in revenue. And that's why governments and Tories were just as bad at this, end up running deficits as they sort of, it's easier to cut that little bit of, raise a little bit of, spend a little bit more and raise a little bit less, and you end up in this situation. But I say you cannot go on year after year running a deficit. I mean, Gordon Brown, when he became Chancellor 28 years ago, told us he was only going to borrow over the, during the bad times. He was going to balance the budget over the fiscal cycle, as he called it, economic cycle.
Right.
And, he stuck to it for a few years, and then he sort of unleashed the purse strings and ended up borrowing during the good times as well as the bad times.
Well, this is the trouble. It becomes an addiction, doesn't it? Ross, we've got to leave it there, I'm afraid. Thanks very much indeed. Great column in The Sun today, page 10. Rachel Reeves, why she has to cut more and more and more. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:30. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Of course, we're going to be talking to Chris Evans very shortly, Virgin Radio presenter, in the middle of his breakfast show, believe it or not. Let's get a voice note from Liam first, though.
Good morning, Mike. Liam in Folkestone. Just listening to your show, walking alongside the English Channel just now. It's an absolute mill pond. We've already got 2 border fast vessels making pickups for today's set of uninvited guests. But anyway, I just thought I'd let you know the amount of illegals that have arrived since Starmer was elected currently stands at 29,089 on 529 boats. That's already over 500 more than the whole of 2021 and only 400 off the whole of 2023. It's looking like we could actually hit 5,000 alone this month. It's a disaster, it's out of control, and it's never going to stop.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've already got 5,847 since the beginning of the year. So very easily we could have sort of 5,000 a month once the weather starts to get better. Because if you remember, the weather was pretty awful January and February. How about this from Barry in Stratford? He says, Mike, why does everyone think picking up litter and emptying bins is a punishment? It's really annoying. I clean for a living and I take pride in my work. Why don't they say make people radio presenters, etc., to punish them? Yeah, well, I mean, you could say that. Some people might find it punishing. I must admit, I don't find it punishing. The UK has gone to pot in more ways than one, says Stalk. Absolutely right. And one here from Kenny in Edinburgh. He says, Mike, I think people that run marathons already have a rotted brain. When I'm at the bus stop going to work every morning, I see joggers, even at the ridiculous time of 5:30 a.m. Well, people do like to run. There is a story which we're going to talk to Chris Evans about very shortly. Marathon running may burn brain cells, according to a study. The headline says it destroys your brain. And it's all about something called myelin, which apparently is some kind of, fat that surrounds the nerve endings and the parts of your brain which make you function, basically, as an intelligent form of a human being. Because what it does is it basically protects the outer surfaces of those nerve areas so that they don't get damaged. But the problem is when you run a marathon, you start to burn fat. And once you've burned all the fat in your body, you then start to burn the fat in your brain. And once the fat in your brain starts to burn, then your brain starts to get affected by it. And it can lead to things like coordination not being as good as it should be, and all sorts of other senses somehow not working as well as they ought to. So we'll find out from Chris what it's like to run marathons, because obviously I don't run them. Let's get another voice note from John on housing.
Morning, Mike. John in Derbyshire. Just jumping back to house building. Good one for you. Huge development site up here being done, and they're just building them really, really slowly. And I said to the guy that's basically selling the houses, the activity looks really, really slow. He says, yeah, we've rolled out the plan from 4 years to 7 years because we just can't get the tradesmen. So there you go, Mike. That's a big, huge housing development that's going to take double the amount of time. So where are the 1.5 million coming from? I'll leave it with you. Cheers, Mike.
Thanks very much indeed, John, on the housing front there. Yeah, lots going on this morning, and even more going on than I ever expected there was going to be, because there's a slight change of plan. Chris Evans has just joined me. Very good morning to you, Chris.
Hey, Mike.
Haven't you got a show to do?
Well, I'm doing a show, but somebody said, will you go and talk to Mike about marathons destroying your brain? So
yes.
I said, yes, but I'll need to put on 2 songs. So we put on 2 songs now, and then the team have got something to do after that if I'm not back in time.
Okay.
But speaking on the home front,
we'll keep it short.
We're talking about gravel drives at the moment on our show.
Are you?
Gravel, where does it go? Because
Yeah.
if you put gravel down, it disappears. And it's a £182 million jackpot tonight for the Euro Millions, who sponsor our show,
Yes.
National Lottery.
Okay.
So if somebody wins it and buys a big new house with a drive, are they going to go gravel or not? Or where does the gravel go? Where does the gravel go? Where do the years go?
Well, I mean, what causes potholes? I mean, we've been talking about potholes a lot this morning because, they're all over the place, right?
We've got 3 on Marlow High Street, and they are treacherous.
They're really bad, and it seems that nobody seems to get... I mean, in the little town in Sussex where I go at the weekends, they've repainted the zebra crossing, right?
Yep.
But it's got potholes in it.
Yeah.
So then they're going to they're now going to fix the potholes, have to repaint it again.
Well, they're axle breakers and ankle breakers. I once drove over a pothole in Ascot High Street when we used to live in Ascot before we moved to Milo, and it broke the front axle of my car.
Ridiculous.
And where there's blame, there's a claim.
And some of your cars, you don't want to be driving over potholes, do you?
Well, that was a Lotus.
Yeah.
It's like I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your car down. It's one of those. But the other thing is, have you seen on Instagram where those brilliant artists, they draw potholes in that aren't there?
Yeah.
Do you know?
They're three-dimensional.
Which is the opposite.
Right. Yeah, we don't want that, because you don't go round a pothole that isn't there.
God,
listen, anyway,
I tell you what, you're flying today, aren't you?
I know. Listen, so marathon running, right? Apparently, I've discovered something that I didn't know existed called myelin. Do you know about this?
Yes.
Myelin is a kind of fat that's in your brain that protects the nerve endings of your brain.
Yes.
And when you run, and you do it a lot, you run. How many marathons do you run?
Many.
Yes. Dozens, right?
Yeah.
Apparently,
not dozens, but many.
Apparently, if the fat in your body starts to disappear, it then starts going after the myelin in your brain.
Yes.
And then you can be uncoordinated. Has that ever happened to you?
Well, you have to start off with a decent few brain cells in the first place. So I'm all right, I think.
Yeah, you got plenty.
I think from a low level.
Oh, okay.
I'm the opposite. But I was thinking about this. First of all, it is a scientific study of 10 people out of 7.5 billion.
Are you saying it may not be?
Well, it's also from a professor in Spain at the University of.
No, it's not just Spain. It's the University of the Basque Country.
Yeah, but still only 10 people. In Spain, hot day, not much to do in Spain. And then I was looking at what else causes the same issue.
Yes.
Sedentary lifestyle, same issue.
Yeah.
Poor diet, opiates, junk food, stimulating thoughts, overeating, alcohol, no breakfast, eating habits, sugar, skipping meals, exercise, smoking, lack of socialising, chronic stress, sleep deprivation. So it's...
hang on. But if you haven't suffered any of these symptoms, then obviously it hasn't affected you anyway.
No, and also it does say in the article that they all recovered everything that was wrong with them.
They did because once they recovered, presumably once the fat was not being sucked out of them by the marathon running.
Yeah, no, I get it, and I don't care.
I've also done some reading. I've also done some reading.
But have you done some running, Mike?
No, I do run for the bus occasionally. But not very often. But the thing is, you can replace any of this fat if it has disappeared with eating sardines or mackerel.
Yeah.
Apparently, that's a very good thing to eat.
But the story that we talked about to do with fat was out of America yesterday, and I wasn't going to talk about it, Mike.
Okay.
But it's a pig story.
Okay.
Right? And I don't know if you ever have this on your show, but I wasn't going to talk about it.
We've had some pigs on here.
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting, the story. And I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. It's not us. And so then I came in this morning, and then we just talked about 2 other stories that had pigs in them.
Right.
And this happens a lot on our show, and I think, oh, maybe that's a sign. Maybe I should talk about the pig story.
Yeah.
So I did talk about the other pig story, which is to do with fat.
Right.
So now the average American man is more over fat than the average American pig.
What?
Yes.
Right. Well.
Because they're breeding pigs leaner.
Yeah.
Because people prefer leaner pork, which has
yeah.
caused the average American pig to be less fat than the average American male.
That doesn't surprise me. But we used to look at America and go, look at all those fat people over there. It's worse here now. I mean, you walk around the streets of Britain and you see plenty of fat people.
That's why you should marathon run.
Yeah, but the trouble with the marathon, right, is that it blocks so many other things. You know, it completely ruins where I live in London for the entire, day. In fact, effectively. In fact, my house becomes marooned, right?
Cleanest air day of the year.
How do you know that?
Because they've done all the studies.
Yeah, well, Sadiq Khan keeps telling us it's cleaner air since they put the
I'm
congestion charge on.
I'm talking about my friend Hugh Brasher, whose dad created the London Marathon. He was also the man who created the London Marathon. His dad, Chris Brasher, was pretty anti-marathon himself.
Was he?
Because he was a 3,000 metre runner. He was a steeplechase runner.
Right. I've always been haunted by the guy that invented jogging. Do you remember him?
Yes.
Who died jogging.
That was in the 70s, wasn't it?
It was, an American.
And have you seen, there's a documentary on jogging.
Yeah.
When it first started.
Yeah.
And there are a group of housewives jogging in a pretty typical suburban American area.
Right.
And this film crew from the local news show followed them, and they say, "What are you doing?" And they're, "Oh, well, we're doing this thing called jogging."
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, listen, what a great interlude we've just had.
Well, I hope
this is
so.
wonderful. Yeah, no, it was great. Great
Anyway,
to see you.
I'm going to go back to rock and roll, back to gravel, back to what... Well, here's the thing. What would you do if you won the Euro Runners tonight? Not what would you buy, you pay off mortgages and things like that, healthcare, blah, blah, blah. But what would you do? Would you carry on doing this if you won £182 million tonight?
Absolutely.
Would you take a break or...?
I don't think so.
You just crack on doing it?
Just carry on, yeah. Carry on. I'd probably be slightly more smug. And I wouldn't worry so much about them threatening to take my money away.
Exactly.
You know.
You'd be a bit more secure, which might make the show even better if that were possible,
They'd
Michael.
probably make me work for nothing. They'd go, we don't need to pay you now, so you can just do it for nothing.
We know your rules.
We've had a word with the finance department.
And the other thing we did based on that, it's a big day for us because our national lottery, 182 million.
Right.
The other big thing we did was bonkers purchases. Would you make a bonkers purchase?
Oh, yeah.
And so the team have already had some bonkers purchases.
Yes.
Tilly bought a pair of cowboy jeans for 160 quid when she was drunk one night.
Yeah.
Vassos has contemplated buying a beach hut, but has in fact bought a pinball machine.
Yeah.
And I bought a full-size working Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Wow.
What about you? Bonkers purchase?
A watch.
Oh, it's a couple of weeks
after
ago.
lunch, yeah.
Not that
lunch.
bonkers.
Not that
Indulgent.
Bonkers. Tells the time.
Yeah.
So it's helpful.
I think are we over
They're telling me you've got to go.
I know. I can hear. I'm having too much fun talking to another radio pro, legend.
You're too
legend
kind.
that is Mike Graham.
You're too kind. Listen, I'll see you afterwards.
All right, mate.
All right. Thank you so much.
Usual place, usual space.
Yeah, absolutely. As long as you haven't lost any myelin between now and then. Let's hope you haven't.
Where am I? What am I doing?
Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Evans.
Who am I?
Somebody's coming to help you, and then you can go. Thank you very much indeed.
That was fun.
What a pleasure. Great to see you.
Let's do this again.
We will. We're going to talk about sustainability in the North Sea now.
Woo!
Mike Tolan is here. Mike Tolan, a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Sorry to keep you waiting. That was just a little interlude that we sometimes do on these shows. You're the Director of Policy and Sustainability at Offshore Energy. You've got a report out that says we could be producing more oil and gas out of the North Sea. Where have you been all my life?
Running marathons in my case, clearly, but yeah.
Obviously. But seriously, I mean, the North Sea is still a great resource. We were told for years and years and years that the oil and gas was running out, but apparently that's not necessarily true.
No, the exciting news is that we've still got a good future ahead of us, but we really need to make the most of it. In the North Sea, we're currently producing about 40% of the UK's oil and gas, but we could do a lot more over the next few years if we keep focused on it.
Right. And is the only impediment to that then government policy?
There's a few challenges. The first one is the government needs to work more closely with the industry to make most of these opportunities, not least lighten the tax rate a bit on our business, but also make sure that government policies focus on making the most of recovery, which is good for the environment and good for the economy.
Right. I mean, you get the sense, don't you, that in the last government, Rishi Sunak was ready to kind of reverse the debate of a lifetime that they've been having in the Tory party to sort of shut off all the oil and gas. And it seemed like they wanted to open up some new fields and do a bit more exploration. I'm not quite sure what they're doing with the Starmer government, really, because they keep sort of changing. There's a lot of mixed signals coming from them. What's their policy right now?
I think they're still working out how making the most of their own resources fits in with the renewable energy future. And the secret is, actually, we need both to make the journey in the years ahead.
Right.
And that's the exciting opportunity.
Because in terms of the word renewable, I mean, when people say renewable, I assume you mean, you know, wind farms, you know, solar panels, that kind of thing, not fossil fuels. But are you saying that that can be part of the renewable word?
I think it has to be. If we look forward even to 2050, the Climate Change Committee, which if anyone really understands the future ahead of us, says we're going to need about a fifth of all our energy still coming from oil and gas.
Yeah.
So electricity will more than double in size, the supply of electricity.
Yeah.
But that will not meet all of what we need.
Well, that seems very clear, doesn't it? Because what we saw at Heathrow, for example, just last Friday, one substation goes out and they didn't have enough backup generators to power up the whole of the airport, although it does seem as though they didn't actually have power cuts in all of the airport either. But it troubles me deeply that we'll be seeing more of that kind of thing as more and more strain is put on the national grid.
And we're saying we make the most of what we got. You know, it's wrong not to count your blessings. We have a huge, exciting resource in wind here in the North Sea, but alongside that, carbon storage. But we still shouldn't give up the day job.
Yeah.
We're going to need oil and gas for decades to come.
And how much would it cost vis-a-vis the amount it costs to put, say, a wind farm into the North Sea? You know, because people never really talk about that. You know, Ed Miliband's full of the joys of spring when he talks about, you know, how much we've got in terms of wind farms all over the country and in the sea as well. But we've equally got to repair and replace those things. It's not like they're there forever, is it?
No, certainly. And over the next 5 years, we look to spend about £50 billion in installing wind farms here in the North Sea. But over the same period, we can spend a similar amount of money developing new oil and gas and making the most of the resources we've got. So the exciting thing is the oil and gas money is money that doesn't come from government. It comes from investors who are wanting to develop these resources to benefit the economy.
Yeah. Exactly, and I mean, in terms of the sort of the cost to companies that would want. I mean, we saw BP recently suddenly deciding that their green policy was actually a pretty bad idea. They nearly crashed the entire company. So now they say they're going to go back to a bit more of what they used to do, which is exploring for oil and gas. So would you be getting people like that interested in doing it?
BP continue to invest seriously in the North Sea. They've got some great fields both to the west of the Shetlands in the central North Sea, and it's still very much a heartland for BP even after 50 years of their operations here.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. So, I mean, are you able to talk to the government on any level about this kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm pleased to say there's a really good dialogue going with the government at the minute, both on the fiscal regime and indeed on wider policy and how we can be a really important part of that. We have a huge skilled workforce. And if it isn't working here in the UK, it will go overseas. So we need to make the most of those people here in the UK to benefit everyone.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This is a great idea. Mike Tolan, thank you very much indeed, Director of Policy and Sustainability at Offshore Energy. As I said, you know, these voices have been sort of silenced over the years by the Green lobby and the Green Brigade because they think oil and gas is like a dirty word, or three dirty words, if you like. And it's very clear. People like Mike exist because they're sensible people. He's not saying we shouldn't have any wind farms and we shouldn't have any solar panels, but we should also have oil and gas exploration because it's the most efficient way to heat your home and it's the most sensible way to go forward. And we could actually produce billions and billions and billions of barrels of oil, more so than we are doing currently, because all it needs is for the money and the wherewithal and the companies to get behind it. Absolutely great idea. I couldn't agree more with Mike Toland. Finally, we found a voice of reason when it comes to this ridiculous argument about net zero. 0344 499 1000 is the number. We've got loads more going on. How about this from Graham, who says in Birmingham, Mike, you said you can't get across the road when the London Marathon is on. Put a number on your vest, wear some shorts and join in for a while. Well, I can pretend to just run in normal clothes, I suppose, and then you can get to the other side. If you find you're keeping up with them, carry on to the end, you might end up winning it. Yeah, I don't think there's much chance of that, I'm afraid. And Jeremy says, love the Chris Evans visit, you should make it a regular feature. I mean, we could see what we could do about that. I mean, certainly I enjoyed it. Morning, Mike, says Gary in Shrewsbury. Regards jogging, walking is far better for you, along with swimming and cycling. Apart from potentially destroying your brain, it will destroy your knees and your back. And oh my God, these joggers don't half think they're important. Checking their watch every 2 minutes like they're in the Olympics when they're just running around the local river. It's like all these bozos on the bikes, isn't it, with the old numbers on their back, you know, Team Sky or whatever. It's like, you're not in Team Sky, are you? You just bought that from a sort of cosplay cycling shop. And then they ride around in a peloton, a word that nobody had ever heard of until 2012, when we had the Olympics, for heaven's sake. Anyway, 8:47.
I don't know who Sabrina Carpenter is. And
Fair
if
enough.
I was off the ticket, I wouldn't go. What I do mind from Rachel Reeves is the rank hypocrisy of it. When they were holding us up in government as my ministers using the corporate jet to go here, there, and everywhere. This lot are doing it times 10. Yeah. And they were moaning about the freebie trips, and here they are, this lot getting new clothes, glasses, concert tickets here, there, and everywhere.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, coming up to nearly just 9 minutes to 9. I don't know why it's 9 minutes to 9. I've just suddenly seen that that's some kind of a magic number, isn't it? 9 minutes to 9? I don't know. Coming up in the next hour, of course, Kemi Badenoch will be on the show. We've got lots of questions that many of you have put to us, thank you, which we will ask her. And she's got much to say, I'm sure, about a great many things. Of course, Rachel Reeves and her big announcement tomorrow, the budget statement, the spring budget statement, is, of course, going to be occupying a lot of people's minds. And we'll find out about that. Kinsey Schofield, Brendan O'Neill as well in the next hour. Right now, though, let's talk to Brian Berry. He's the CEO from the UK's largest construction trade body, the Federation of Master Builders. He's going to tell us what he thinks of the second reading of the housing bill, because basically a lot of people are seeing it as Rachel Reeves trying to sort of buy off an awful lot of rebels inside the Labour Party with £2 billion for social housing. The big question really, Brian, a very good morning to you, is whether there's any capacity in the business to build this number of houses, because I hear from an awful lot of people in construction that there simply aren't enough people, there aren't enough builders, there aren't enough sort of hours in the day, if you like, to put all these houses up. What do you reckon?
Yeah, Mike, you're absolutely right. To build 1.5 million new homes, it's estimated we need 250,000 extra workers to come into the building industry. And we've already got a skills crisis in the building industry. We've got a shortage of all the key trades, particularly bricklayers and carpenters. So that's a mammoth challenge to build 1.5. But we are not anywhere near that figure at the moment. You know, the government would need to be building 300,000 homes a year to meet its own target. At the moment, it's about just over 200,000. So that takes some of the pressure off. Because of obviously a lack of demand at the moment in the market for people getting onto the housing ladder. So the government is very focused on housing as the main vehicle to generate economic growth, but we're not seeing that at the moment.
And what about this idea of building more social housing? Because I suppose if you were saying, you know, there's not the demand for the housing because it's too expensive to a large extent for a lot of people to afford, will social housing help or not?
Yeah, it's interesting today, isn't it? We've seen the announcement of the extra £2 billion that the government has said is available for social housing. They've said social and affordable. They're talking about 18,000. And having looked on the government's website, they're saying they're hoping that half that number would be for social housing. That gives us an extra 9,000. There are 1.6 million people on the social housing waiting list. So it's a step in the right direction, but it's a small increment in terms of what needs to be done. I understand there's going to be a further announcement in June from the government about social housing. The last time we built 300,000 new homes was in 1969, 1970. And we did that because we were building a lot of social housing in the post-war period. And that stopped in the late 70s, early 80s. So we've never regained that high level of delivery since that period. So it's a mammoth challenge to build 1.5 million over the next 4 years.
Right. Bridget Phillipson the other day was announcing a £600 million grant to train people up to be electricians and bricklayers and plasterers and all the rest of it. Some people said to me that's nowhere near enough money to do that kind of thing. Well, I mean, is that going to... But and again, it's going to take a few years, isn't it?
Absolutely. Look, this is a good announcement. At least they're talking about encouraging people to come into the building industry. We've had an issue with people being encouraged to go to university and not actually learn an apprenticeship. So it's good we're hearing the ministers talking about being a brickie, because it's a fantastic career for young people. But that money really is a small drop in the ocean compared to the underfunding over decades of our further education system. Lots of colleges are underfunded, and we need to actually get vocational training on a par with higher education. So it is a forward step, but you know, we are going to have to struggle. We'll struggle, I think, to get enough people coming in, but also finding enough employers to take on the apprentices. There has been obviously a reliance on using non-UK people coming into the country. Now we're having to invest, which is the right thing to be doing in terms of training local talent and encouraging more people to come into the building industry.
Yeah, because one of the things I see, and it may be just because I'm in the centre of London, but I also see it in the southeast, in Sussex and Kent when I go down there at weekends and stuff, is there's an awful lot of building actually going on, isn't there? I mean, there's an awful lot of construction sites, there's an awful lot of, you know, I notice them now more, particularly in London, because they've got more of these traffic wardens than they ever used to have before. These little dozens of people standing around in orange high-vis jackets telling you you can't go somewhere. But there's a lot of building going on, isn't there? I mean, it's like a growth industry, isn't it?
Well, house building has dropped. I mean, we're not producing the number of homes that are required, but what we are seeing is quite a lot of home improvements. We're seeing in the last few years home extensions, loft conversions. People are unable to afford to move, so they're trying to create extra space in their home, and so that's been really good for small builders. My members operate mostly in the repair, maintenance, and improvement sector,
right?
And so that has been very, very good. But we are seeing problems with the economy. National insurance contributions going up now in April, so there's less money to go around, and so we're seeing the number of inquiries starting to fall. So it is still, yes, there is work at the moment, but I think a lot of builders are fearful about what does the extra tax mean for homeowners looking to improve their home. So it's steady as we go at the moment in terms of that. But the house building, and the government recognises this, we've really got to have a drive to push those numbers up.
Yeah, and I mean, I suppose the other problem, and maybe this is not one that you should necessarily worry too much about, but a lot of the places where I see house building going on, in Sussex, for example, is around small towns where suddenly there's another few hundred houses being built around the back of, the existing ones, or there's another few hundred houses being built on the outskirts of the town, and there doesn't appear to be any kind of methodology behind it in terms of, the road system, perhaps, or the school systems, or the hospitals, or anything like that. Could that be improved as well?
Well, Mike, I think you've touched on something where we're seeing market towns where thousands of homes built around the edges with no sense of placemaking, no shops, no local facilities, car reliant, which is not really helpful. And that's because I think our housing system is dominated by major house builders. They build 80% of all the homes in this country, and what you see is very similar homes right across from Cornwall up to Northumberland. What we need to do is actually see a diversification of the housing market, so we've got more local house builders having the opportunity to build. And we've been asking for reforms to the planning system which would encourage local authorities to find those small sites of for 4 or 5 houses in every village, every town, which means you get more organic growth, you get a variety of housing, you get that better placemaking, rather than, as we're seeing across the country, thousands of homes, very similar looking, tacked onto the edge of market towns, creates a lot of local opposition. We're not getting that placemaking that's so essential to create a community.
No, exactly right. I've got this from Richard in Macclesfield. He says, Rachel Reeves announces plans to help builders and housing associations to make millions and leave families no chance of creating assets of their own. Almost all new low-cost houses never come to the open market. Of course, under any circumstances, starter homes are needed.
You're absolutely right in terms of trying to encourage people onto the housing ladder. It is so difficult, almost impossible. In London, the ratio is 14-1. That was about 6-1 in the late 1990s. At the moment, there's no help from the government for first-time buyers. And that seems to be, to me, a big mistake. We know that most people would like to own their own home, and yet there's no encouragement there to actually get onto the housing ladder. So we need to actually increase the supply, but there does need to be some incentive for people to be able to get onto the housing ladder. That said, we know there is also an urgent need for more social and affordable homes.
Absolutely. Brian, listen, I'm sorry, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much. We've got to go to the news. Brian Berry from the Federation of Master Builders.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 9. The day is looking slightly brighter, I'd have to say, but it's still not quite as bright as it was yesterday afternoon. But it was lovely. Beautiful sunshine yesterday afternoon, I have to say. It's supposed to be getting warmer throughout the course of this week as well, so something to look forward to. Coming up in this hour, Kemi Badenoch's going to be on the show. We've got lots of questions for her, supplied by your good selves. So this is the place to come for common sense, and you have it in absolute spade bucket loads, I have to say. So we've got a lot of questions for the leader of the opposition. We'll be putting them to her. Also, we're going to talk to Brendan O'Neill in this hour, and Charlie Mullins, the founder of Pimlico Plumbers, is with us as well, because of course he's found himself on the front page of the Daily Telegraph today, saying that they almost wanted to take his OBE off him because of his outspoken views on things, which might be described, I suppose, by the blob or those of the sort of the lefty establishment as a bit right-wing. Ridiculous, really. 0344 499 1000. We're going to talk about Keir Starmer as well. Says he wants to be the friend of the motorists suddenly. He's discovered potholes. We'll play you a clip of him visiting Halfords, looking about as ridiculous as he always looks, because, of course, what he's planning to do is say that he's going to drive down the cost of motoring. Well, I don't know how he's going to do that with Sadiq Khan considering charging people to drive by the mile, considering the fact that there's 2 tunnels now going to be running through London across and underneath the River Thames, which are going to be toll tunnels, which means that's the price of motoring going up. Meanwhile, road tax has gone up. Meanwhile, fuel tax may not have gone up, but it's very, very expensive to put petrol in your car these days. The cost of parking has gone up. The cost of parking fines has gone up. They're talking about £160 now for a parking fine in London. The cost of bus lane fines is going up. And, of course, the ULEZ charges as well. It's all going up, up, up. Never goes down. Also, Rachel Reeves, she's in trouble again. She's been taking some more free tickets, this time for the National Theatre. Not content with going to see Sabrina Carpenter with a member of her family. Also, we're going to be talking about Ed Miliband, because he's apparently admitted that the solar panels that are going to be put on schools in this country, supplied by GB Energy, are probably going to be made in China by slaves. So we've got a new name for Ed Miliband and the Labour Party. It's this: Slave Labour. 0344 499 1000. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Got this from Steve in Sussex. Mike, great show, but I'm incredibly frustrated at a number of callers who say, why can't the government stop the boats? I'm fed up listening to it. What we should be looking into is why don't governments stop the boats? Simply, the simple answer is they don't want to. Now, why That is the question. Be it votes, cheap labour, by businesses, so keeping wages down, etc. I'd love to know the answer. Simply fix every boat that leaves France, just rip up a fishing licence. Well, yeah, I mean, there's any number of different ways that they could fix it. I don't think it's anything to do with cheap labour, because I don't think any of these people coming in on the small boats are actually going to work. Certainly not anywhere other than driving around on a scooter with an L plate on it, which is becoming more and more prevalent in all parts of the country. They just seem to not have the will to do it. I don't really understand why. Gerald says, Mike, I always thought it was stupid people who ran marathons. Now I know that it's running marathons that makes you stupid. Well, not according to Chris Evans. Robin Dorset says, brilliant to see Chris Evans with you this morning, Mike. That bloke's a legend and makes me long for the good old non-woke days of the 90s and TFI Friday. What a time to be young that was. I know. If you go back and look at some of that stuff, it's quite remarkable. Let's get a voice note from Joanne on housing.
Morning, Mike. Joanne from Norfolk. Oh, it does make me laugh when you see governments going on about, oh, we're spending billions, we're going to get loads of employed carpenters and electricians and bricklayers. Does anybody remember what happened around the time when the Olympic Games came to London?
Oh, yes.
And the buildings and the infrastructure that went up? Do you know who they brought in to build that? Oh, builders from Europe. Yes, cheap builders from Europe. All of ours got told, no work for you. So most of them left the industry and there's been no push to get anyone back into it since. Oh, until now, when we need 1.5 million homes to put migrants in. Well, I'm sick of it. Governments, one after the other, have been complicit in the destruction of this country. We're slowly but utterly going down the hole and it's all their fault. Thanks, Mike. Great show.
Joanne, what a very eloquent voice note. Thank you for that. He absolutely sums it all up in a very perfect few minutes there, a few seconds. People are leaving the construction industry, says Papa, as it pays on the books not much more than minimum wage. 20 years ago, it was 140% more. That's interesting. With regards to the roads, how about this from Fiona? Roads are just underinvested. Money has gone on cycle routes, road humps and low traffic neighbourhoods, but they actually make roads worse. This seems like an exercise for Keir to reduce central government's bill for regions roads because councils will have to spend more money on collecting data. I know, he seems obsessed with that, doesn't he? Let's have a look at him actually visiting Halfords to collect some data.
This is pothole damage.
Oh, you can see it, yeah.
Hit a pothole and it just ruins the sidewalk.
Hit to a pothole. If it's strong enough to break Basically, that. yes, it will be.
I've lost at least 3 tyres down to potholes twice in 2 months.
First thing we need to do is get a bit of accountability into it to know which councils are doing what where, how many times they're filling in holes, so we can get a bit of data on that, which we haven't got. But this, what we're announcing today, is to incentivise them to get on and do it.
We obviously have customers day in, day out coming in with the same issues, and I think having spoken to a man who can actually, bring change and make something happen about it, that can only be a positive thing for him to come in and see it in real terms.
I had to change all of my tyres at the end, and it's quite nice that we see things done to fill in the potholes at the moment.
We need to see a bit of accountability and some data, is what he says. Starmer's not fooling me, says Michelle, with his ridiculous visit to Halfords. I'm just surprised he's got so close to actual normal working people. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's almost as if he's just discovered that potholes are a thing. Almost as though he's just discovered that potholes are something that people care about. Incredible. Absolutely unbelievable. How about this from, this is a good one actually from Steve, who sent it in a bit earlier. Mike, you're talking about potholes. What about road markings? The M1 is a disgrace. Most of the markings have worn off, so when it rains, you don't know which lane you're in. Great show. Love my dose of common sense in the morning. And by the way, just so that some of you aren't discouraged about it, there's more bumper stickers going out soon, because an awful lot of you have been sending in pictures of your bumper stickers on your back of your van, back of your car, back of your lorry. Very, very encouraging to see. The home of common sense. Who would not want to be part of that? The UK has gone to pot in more ways than one, says Stork. And Billy says, morning from pothole-less Denmark. Keep up the great work. Well, this is the thing. I mean, almost every other country you go to, there is literally no potholes and these beautifully well-surfaced roads. Incredible, really. Jess says this, Mike, I'd like to see a debate on the migrants arriving by boat being put in hotels and given access to medical services and benefits held between MPs and the homeless, or those unable to get on the housing ladder. Real people, not the middle-class types on Question Time. Absolutely right. And Steve says, yeah, I'm just hearing that story from your show on Sheffield for the first time. The Eritreans fighting. I live in Sheffield and I haven't heard anything about this until just this minute. I'm wondering why. Well, it was reported in the national press. It was certainly reported in the Times, which is where I read it, over the course of the weekend. And I know that Isabel Oakeshott wrote a piece for The Telegraph as well. So if it's not being reported locally, I don't know. David in Stoke-on-Trent says, how disrespectful to our UK solar panel manufacturers to buy them from China. We know where government loyalties lie. We'll shall have a look at Ed Miliband talking about putting these solar panels on the roofs of schools.
Great British Energy is your publicly owned energy company, and here's its first project, putting solar panels on the roofs of schools and hospitals in your community. That's what a publicly owned energy company can do for our country.
Yeah, well, that's all very well, Ed, but unfortunately, you're now being accused of using slave labour to build them. So all the while, also somebody said to me earlier on today, I don't know if, I think it was a tweet, apparently solar panels are very, very well liked by pigeons who like to make a nest underneath them, which makes a hell of a mess. So if you've got solar panels on the roof of your house, you could have a bird problem. And currently with the state of bird flu in this country, where they managed to infect a sheep, I'm not saying that there's any kind of scare stories going on here, but, you know, you could be causing an outbreak of bird flu by putting solar panels on your house. Only kidding. Let's talk about Rachel Reeves, of course. She's back in the news because apparently it turns out that there was trouble. She's speaking tomorrow at the budget statement, of course, and it was Bridget Phillipson, I think, the Education Secretary, who came out inadvertently yesterday and said, oh, yeah, here's what we're going to do. We're going to scrap free school meals. And here's what Rachel Reeves had to say.
But this government is rolling out free breakfast clubs in all primary schools from April. I don't recognise those claims that the government are looking at means testing free school meals. In fact, this government are ensuring that all children get a good start to the day with a breakfast club, helping working parents and helping all children get a good start in life. That's what this government is determined to do after 14 years of Conservative failure.
OK, so it's working parents now, is it? Not just working people. So she goes, yeah, we're going to help working parents. Why aren't you going to help all parents? I mean, free school meals for everyone is a ridiculous idea. Sadiq Khan's one of the people that brought this in because he thought that people who shouldn't be stigmatised because they're getting free school meals because everyone knows they're poor. I don't think people care about that. You know, if it's costing us a fortune to feed everybody's child, what is the point? Would be my point, for heaven's sake. Let's talk to Brendan O'Neill, who is Chief Political Writer at Spikes, of course. We've got plenty to talk to him about. Brendan, very good morning to you.
Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm laughing away today because I've sort of followed the ludicrous logic of Ed Miliband, and I've come up with this great idea to stop them putting solar panels all over people's houses, because apparently solar panels create a very nice and warm environment for pigeons who like to nest there, thereby creating, you know, dirt, horribleness, you know, the usual stuff that follows pigeons around, and the potential for bird flu, of course. So, you know, despite the fact that he's buying all these solar panels that are made by slave labour in China, this is another reason not to put them on.
Oh, absolutely. There are so many reasons not to put them on. Whenever I walk past a house with solar panels, I just think, what a show-off that person is. It's really... It's as much about signalling your eco-virtue as it is about actually generating energy. That's right. That's what they're really about. That's why you see them in those kind of very leafy suburbs. You'll see kind of solar panels, people showing off. But, you know, the fact that Labour is not going to block solar panels that were potentially made by supply chains that have slaves in them, I mean, that really sums up modern-day environmentalism. You know, there is no price too high for their climate change crusade. They will do anything to prove how serious they are about stopping the so-called apocalypse, even taking solar panels made by people who are enslaved or paid very badly or treated badly. You know, their virtue comes before everything else, even the rights of workers in China. It's a very interesting moment.
Well, isn't it just? It's a bit like watching those maniacs in America setting fire to Teslas and spray painting them and apparently making them the enemy of the state now because they're owned by Elon Musk, as opposed to the fact that they're supposed to save the world.
Yeah, well, the anti-Tesla thing is so fascinating because, you know, a few years ago, these same people would have been buying Teslas and driving them and saying, look how wonderful we are. We're saving the planet. We're saving billions of people's lives. And now they're turning on them or selling them or even in some cases burning them because they hate Elon Musk so much. And why do they hate Elon Musk? It's because he lets people speak on the internet. You know, the biggest crime ever, apparently. He lets women say that men aren't women. He lets people express their, he lets people express their discomfort with mass immigration. He lets people express themselves, and that's what they really hate. And of course, they hate the fact that he's taken a sword to the bloated bureaucratic state in America, which I wish someone would do in England as well, by the way.
Yeah, so do I. Absolutely right. Unfortunately, they haven't quite got the cojones to do it here. Brendan, we've got to leave it there. Thanks very much indeed for talking to us. Brendan O'Neill, Chief Political Writer at Spite. Coming up next, Kemi Badenoch is going to be joining us. We've got a lot of questions for her, supplied by you. I'm looking forward to putting those to her, and that's all coming up right after this.
Absolutely right. There's loads of money in it for these people.
800 quid a day.
Extraordinary, isn't it? And the problem we've got is that the Prime Minister built his whole career on this kind of stuff. And this is why he's in such a bind. He can't really go against it, not only because he'll stop being invited to fancy lefty-loving dinner parties in Islington and all the rest of it, but that his whole career will be proven to have been built on a load of cobblers. That's the problem, right? Is this ECHR here in the room with us now? You'd have to ask him.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to very nearly 20 minutes past 9. I'm delighted to say we're joined by the Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch. Kemi, very good morning to you.
Thank you, Mike.
Haven't seen you since just before we did the interview, just before you became the leader, actually. But how do you think it's going?
I think it's going well. It's obviously the worst inheritance any Conservative Leader of the Opposition has ever had.
But worse than Labour's inheritance?
I think so. 120 MPs is a historic low.
Yeah.
So we're starting from a difficult place. And one of the things I'm keen to emphasise is the party is under new leadership. Where we made mistakes before, we're acknowledging them and showing people what we can do in the future, but taking time to think it through. None of this making announcements and promises with no plan and no idea how you're actually going to do it, which is what Labour have done and why they're in the mess they're in now.
Well, they certainly are in a mess, and we'll talk more about that in a moment, because, of course, Rachel Reeves is making a big statement tomorrow, the budget statement, which is not... I don't think anyone in the country is looking forward to it, really. I saw that you tweeted out yesterday the Conservatives are going to table an amendment to the crime bill to force a national statutory inquiry into the grooming gangs. Tell us a bit about that.
So we tried to do this previously in the education bill. Not having enough MPs makes it harder, but I don't want to let this issue go. It's something that I have worried about for years. I spoke about it during the leadership contest. It was part of my conference speech. We've got to look after people who are vulnerable. We've got to look after women and girls where they are in dangerous situations, and we also need to see justice done. And I don't think that we have seen full justice done. We had a task force 2023 that found about 500 new perpetrators. We need to make sure that we catch everyone, and that requires a national inquiry.
And should there have been a national inquiry earlier then, under different Tory leadership?
Well, we had an inquiry and it didn't come out with what I was expecting. So that's why I'm asking for a national inquiry. It wasn't that we did nothing. We had a previous inquiry into child sexual abuse. It was too broad, not deep enough into this specific issue. And we had a task force after that, still finding more. So it doesn't just stop where we left things. We can't say, because we did some things and we didn't find out enough, that's the end of the story. We've got to keep going. We can't let it go.
And why do you think Keir Starmer's so reluctant to do it?
I think that there are many reasons why he's reluctant to do it. I think that he is someone who doesn't like looking too deeply into issues that might be contentious. With the rape gangs, there are issues around, where these people came from, culture. I think he's very uncomfortable in that sort of space, just doesn't want to go there. I'm not afraid of going into those spaces. I think we have to do things properly. We have to be brave. That's what politicians are there for, to take difficult decisions. I also think that he wants to move on and talk about the kind of things that that he likes. I know that it's not going to be easy because many of these areas were Labour-run councils. I think it's very difficult for them politically as a party. Where there are Conservative councils involved, I think we should look into it. But people should go to prison, people should go to jail for decisions that were made outside the perpetration of those of the rapes, but also, in my view, when you look at the administration. What were the police doing, councils, who got things wrong? Let's start looking at where failures were so we don't make those mistakes again.
And certainly Maggie Oliver, who we speak to on a regular basis, who you'll know as well, I mean, she will tell you that it's still going on in many of these communities as well.
Exactly.
And so... What would be, when would you find out whether this will work or not? When
we tabled the amendment this week.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly when the vote will be, but I want people to know that this is an issue that we're going to keep going with. We're not just doing it because it's newsy. It's something that strikes at the heart of the principles that I believe in. Family is really important. A lot of these people did not have, families that were able to support them. In some cases, where the fathers went in to help their children, their daughters, they got arrested.
Yeah.
We've got to make sure that we have strong communities that are cohesive, not all this ghettoization where people look after those who look like them. That's not the sort of country we want to be.
No.
There's so much that we need to fix on this.
I've got some questions for you. We asked earlier for the people listening and watching the show this morning to put questions to you, so I'm going to fire away with some of those. This is from Richard. He says, you say we can't achieve net zero by 2050. Would you allow for more coal power stations to open up? And are you pro-fracking?
So the 2050 plan is not working. And what I've said is that we need to be real. We can't just make announcements and look like we don't, like we're not thinking anything through. Especially when you see China opening a coal-fired power station every other week.
And America doing it now as well.
Yes, indeed. Now, what I'm not going to do is say, yes, we're going to open coal-fired power stations. From what I've seen, nobody actually wants to work in coal mines in this country. But let's come up with a new plan. Let's come up with a plan that works, rather than make an announcement and start scrabbling things together. And the same goes for things like fracking. A lot of people think that we should be fracking, but I also know that many communities don't want it where they are, that it causes problems for them. We need to make sure that we've got local consent for things like that, not just imposing it. So how do we make sure we've got a plan that goes across the board that works, that is not going to bankrupt us? That's what I'm working on now.
We spoke to a guy earlier today, actually, who works with an offshore company in terms of drilling and exploration of the North Sea, who says that we could actually do an awful lot more, and he believes that that can be sustainable in its own way. So, I mean, I think there's an opportunity there as well, isn't there?
There is, and I agree with him that we have resources and reserves that we're not exploiting, that we're closing down. That's one of the questions I asked Keir Starmer at Prime Minister's Questions a few weeks ago, that why are we letting these things close down when we can look after ourselves, exploit our own natural gas resources and so on?
That's another question that's coming, this one from Anne. Why doesn't Keir Starmer ever answer a question in Prime Minister's Question Time? Can you not make him answer them?
No, I can't. No one can make him answer. But he doesn't answer questions because he doesn't know. He genuinely doesn't know. I thought he was obfuscating because he didn't want to say the truth. And a lot of the times he actually says things that aren't true. But he doesn't have answers. He didn't have a plan. And so he just keeps repeating the same words. We play Starmer bingo in the office now because we know he's going to say certain things, 22 billion, 14 years, but he's got no answers and no vision for the future.
Could you not be more sort of hard line on him, though? Because some people criticise you for not being hard enough on him, and that may be your deliberate particular style. But people say, you know, because Nick Timothy last week said, you know, he told 25 lies in half an hour.
Yep.
I mean, could you not be more,
remember,
more harsh on him?
I did do that, and there was a time when he actually had to correct the record because he'd said something wrong. And I stood up and said that he had misled the House, and the Speaker called me up for it.
Right.
So there are these rules in Parliament about not telling people when they're lying.
Yeah, you're not allowed to say it, are you?
Yes, there was a day when I actually did it with a Labour MP where I just broke the rules and I said, you are a liar, you're telling lies, and that video went viral. But I got spoken to after that, and I just thought my personal reputation in that moment was more important. But he doesn't have any answers. You know, you may have disagreed with Rishi Sunak on his policies, but he always had an answer. He was on top of his brief. Starmer is not on top of his brief, and neither is Rachel Reeves.
Yeah.
She is totally out of her depth, and they're sort of, you know, just floundering.
Yes.
They're really floundering.
And you mentioned the Speaker of the House, Long Haul Hoyle, as he's now known, or Just Stop Hoyle, as we call him. Rachel's asked the question, why will no MP criticise Speaker Hoyle for spending £250,000 on his first-class flights, five-star hotels and lavish dinners, plus the £7 million on his Grace and Favour apartment, plus the portrait, £36,000. I mean, I even asked Richard Tice what he thought of it, and he wouldn't criticise him. And he said, look, you know, he's a very good speaker. Does he have this kind of power over everybody?
No, I don't think it's a power over people. I think it's a recognition of the role of the Speaker. The job he does is very difficult. It's trying to maintain, you know, order out of the chaos that is Parliament is not easy. But he also is one of the ambassadors for democracy in the world. So he does travel, he meets people in other parliaments, he invites loads of them to come to the UK. So,
but why do we have to pay for him to go to these places? Surely if he's an ambassador going to somewhere like the Cayman Islands, they should be paying, shouldn't they?
I'm sure that in some cases they do, but remember it's reciprocal. So other people come to our country as well. And
do they pay us?
They pay for themselves.
I mean, I imagine we pay for it. It seems like we're paying at both ends of it. It seems to be.
No, I don't think that's the case. I mean, the Speaker will have to answer for his own expenses in the same way that I answer for mine. But he is keeping rules and order in place. I haven't looked at the full nature of the spending, but I do know that he is someone who tries to be fair and make sure that he's doing right by the people of this country.
Well, he's got a very nice Porsche for £36,000, which apparently I paid for.
Oh, has he?
Yeah,
I did not know that.
And the frame for it for £15,000. You know, which surely is unwise, wouldn't you say?
Well, I haven't had any pictures of myself framed or any portraits taken. You'll be pleased to know.
Okay, well, then I can ask you another question now, because a lot of people are asking questions about Rachel Reeves. She's speaking tomorrow. First question from Simon. Should she lose her job because of what she's done to the economy?
Well, I think in any other field she would have. But I think she's actually one of the best that they've got on the Labour bench.
That's the bad news,
which is what's really sad. That if she goes, we're likely to get someone much worse. You listen to Labour backbenchers, and a lot of the things that they ask for are completely crazy. They would bankrupt the country tomorrow. But I do think that she's out of her depth. I remember that first budget where she made fun of me. I wasn't even the leader of the opposition. She made fun of me during that budget. And it was all about how she was the first female chancellor. First, she was so proud of herself. But being the first female whatever is not an achievement if you're doing a bad job.
No.
And it's the people that you're working for that should give a verdict on whether you've achieved something or not.
Yeah.
And the mistakes that she made in that budget are what she's trying to fix now with the emergency budget that we're getting tomorrow. This is not something that's reacting to world events. She made errors, problems have been caused, and now she's going to try and fix them again tomorrow. That's wrong, and I think that she should be judged on that basis.
Yeah, and as you say, she would lose a job in any other situation. She's also in trouble again, the front pages, with more free tickets to things, right? She was at the weekend accused of taking 2 free tickets for Sabrina Carpenter, which she tried to explain away by saying that now she's got security, it's harder for her to do these things. But now, this morning, we learned that she's had another £276 worth of free tickets to the National Theatre. I mean, should there not be a law or a rule of some kind that covers politicians the same way that it covers us, for example? Because we've had business people talking to us saying, if I get a gift of worth more than £25, I have to declare it to the company. There's a thing called the Bribery Act, which means that we can't be bribed by anybody. I'm not allowed to accept freebies, but apparently parliamentarians are. So before I ask you if you've ever accepted a freebie, what can be done? Can you not put some kind of thing in place here? So
we do have things in place. There are rules about what you can and can't do. We do have to declare everything, but many of the things that we get are often as part of the work that they're doing. So, for instance, I would get invited as the Secretary of State, even as leader of the opposition, to state banquets. Now, that's a very, very lovely thing. It's part of the official position. And
I think people would understand that.
But then you then have it across all walks of life. Our constituents invite us to things where they want to talk to us about about something that's going on locally. They want us to open things. So we make sure that we declare it. What I don't understand is where she gets the time to do all these things. I would love to go to more things. I have no time at all. I'm working morning till night, and the enjoyment is just not there because we've got to work so hard.
Well, that is the thing. I mean, suddenly Heidi Alexander actually said that yesterday, and just sort of got Rachel Reeves into a bit of trouble because she just basically said, where did she find the time to do all these things? I don't know. And I mean, I think people would understand it if you were invited by some, constituency organisation that wanted you to come to their, Christmas party or something like that. Fine, but you don't have to go to a Taylor Swift concert with them, do you? Surely.
Well, I think people. This is one of the reasons why it all needs to be declared so that people can make a judgment. So, for example, I got invited a few years ago to Silverstone. I don't like, I don't like Formula One, but actually Buckinghamshire Council had some tickets and they wanted a meeting. We couldn't find time in the diary, and they said, "How about you bring your family and you all get to watch this thing, and then we can have the meeting on a Saturday," which I would never normally do. Family time is so precious. And so you say, actually, fine, this is a quid pro quo. You're taking personal time from me, but there's something else that we're getting in return. We have the meeting, and it's all declared and above board.
Because people worry that I think it was a banking organisation or a financial organisation that invited her to the Sabrina Carpenter box at the O2. I know that it goes on all the time in all sorts of different walks of life, but people would also worry that they will now then have some kind of influence over her. So there is in the future.
There is a ministerial code which, if you do breach, you will get sacked. So there are rules around it, and there are many people who offer things, but there's actually nothing directly related to your job. So people need to look at each of these things closely and carefully.
Okay. And have you taken a freebie recently?
It's been a long time since.
Not since you've been leader of the opposition.
Well, for things like concerts and so on, no, not really. I get donations to help me with my job. So people give money and I can use it to pay for things like transport, hiring other people's services and so on. So we will always, as politicians, have people giving us things because we don't want to spend public money on on our day-to-day job. But that is the reason why we have a transparent process where everything is declared. And if there is a breach, there is a code there which you get sacked if you breach as a minister and so on. And there are investigations on the standard side when people do break the rules.
Okay. You've probably been following the situation with the Reform Party and what's been going on with Rupert Lowe. Lots of people have been saying there's been conversations had about whether he might join the Conservative Party. Do you know about those?
I have no idea what people are talking about. If he's having conversations with Conservatives, they're certainly not people that I speak to. I think it's important that people know what they're voting for. I'm personally not a fan of a lot of people jumping ship from one party to another. People don't understand what they're voting for. And Reform are having problems because they assume that managing members of Parliament is easy. They've only got 5 and they've lost 1. They've got 4 now. That's 20% of their party gone. And one of the things that I am very keen to emphasise is that we have the experience and the credibility. It is not easy managing lots of people. You look at the newspapers last year, it was always about Conservatives arguing. Now that's all gone quiet. We are unifying, we are united because I am dealing with many of the tensions and issues. I'm taking us on a journey, net zero being a classic example. Last week I said it's impossible. We need to start thinking about what new policies can be, but making sure that we're bringing it all together and not squabbling in an unseemly fashion in public.
And we're talking a lot about housing this week as well, and about the number of houses that are going to be built and how many of those houses might end up going to migrant families. Question from Phil is, if you win the next general election, will you put British people first for housing and not migrants?
Yes, we have to. It cannot be the case that people who come from abroad get prioritised before British citizens. There are many rules that were put in place that are being exploited. Of course, when people are genuine refugees, genuine asylum seekers, we have always wanted to help and make sure that those people were made safe. But people have started abusing that system. People who aren't genuine asylum seekers are abusing the system. Sometimes we're trying to deport people. The courts end up making these bizarre rulings. You have judges making rulings that make no sense, and those are the things that I want us to start tackling. So we're going to take some time to come up with proper plans to deal with those things. But as a British taxpayer, as a British citizen, you should be able to get priority in your own country. That's not a controversial thing.
It shouldn't be. Final question for you is on a voice note, which I hope you'll be able to hear. This is from Chris.
Oh.
Good morning, Mike. Chris from Barnsley. Just a question for the Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch. Why is it that politics in this country is so stagnant and boring? And that goes for both parties, not just the current one that's leading the country with Keir Starmer. Look at the razzmatazz of the USA and everything that Donald Trump brings with it, whether he was trying to lead the country or when he's actually in charge. There's a buzz around it, it's entertaining, it's great to watch. Yourselves and Labour, absolutely flatter than 4 o'clock. Outside of Boris Johnson, it's never been entertaining whatsoever. So I just wonder, how can you get people to vote for yourselves?
Okay, that's a great question. I think that there's a lot in that. America is different from the UK. Yeah. We've got the stiff upper lip here. We're a lot more reserved. But it's also because so many people are worried about saying the wrong thing. Yes. And so we end up just having these sort of technocratic, managerialist language, and no one knows what we're talking about. I'm trying to break that mold. I'm trying to speak in a way that people understand. I've always said that I'm not a media personality. I've never wanted to be in show business. We need to be serious. But I think that there's a much more interesting way that we can do politics.
I think Keir Starmer is inevitably the most boring politician of all time, and maybe that's what he's referring to. I mean, he really is, unfortunately, you know, he could literally sort of set wood.
Yes, I tell people that he's a lawyer, not a leader. He's a lawyer more than anything else. I'm not a lawyer, I'm an engineer. And that also brings its own complications. But I want to make sure that we can actually build things for people, that we can show people some excitement, some vision. And that's the work that the Conservative Party, under my leadership, has started.
OK. Kemi Badenoch, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Mike.
This is Talk. We'll be back after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. 9:40 is the time, and of course there's 20 minutes left to go on the biggest and best breakfast show that you can find yourself in any way, shape or form, particularly when it comes to common sense, because that's what we do here. Let's talk about the front page of The Sun this morning, though, with the one and only Kinsey Schofield, US commentator, of course, a podcaster extraordinaire and woman of some renown. Kinsey, have you been on any big entertainment shows this week like you were last week?
You know what? I look to you to secure those spots for me. So,
Listen.
you know, fingers crossed. Let's make this work.
Yes, absolutely right. Now, amazing, isn't it, that we've got a bit of sort of battle of the Montecito misses. And I say that as a plural, misses. We've got not only now Meghan Markle in somebody else's kitchen making food, we've now got Gwyneth Paltrow in her kitchen making food as well.
We do. Now, I am a little bit cynical here because I have followed Gwyneth online for years.
Yeah.
And every weekend she wakes up without her makeup on like a normal person in her pajamas and makes Brad, her husband, a breakfast. I think maybe it's the music, maybe it's just people stumbling upon Gwyneth for the first time. There is a real feeling that Gwyneth is somehow going after Meghan Markle with this sweet video of her making breakfast for her husband. I don't know if I agree. I wonder if we're interpreting it as that because Meghan is basically grifting as Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yes.
Gwyneth Paltrow is not pretending to be Meghan Markle. I think we just witnessed Meghan Markle so fiercely pretend to be Gwyneth Paltrow that's why we're seeing these similarities. But Gwyneth was asked by Vanity Fair about Meghan's new project, and she was so humble and gracious when asked about her. She said, look, we're not friends.
Yeah.
I don't really know her, but there's room for everybody. And I don't see women as competition.
Right.
If she wants to pursue this, she should, which I thought was a very kind reaction to a difficult question.
But she did also say, maybe one day I'll get past the bodyguards and bring her some cake, which I thought was quite interesting.
No, that is true. Yeah. Are those paid extras is what I want to know after witnessing
exactly
her
right.
work in her.
But the story on the front page of The Sun this morning is even bigger in a way, I suppose. It's the Duchess of Sussex has been accused of exploiting her own children as part of her latest money-making venture, which also includes selling items from an online shop.
Oh, my gosh, Mike, like the $500 purses, the $1,500 sweaters. Meghan, you are an influencer. She told People magazine recently that she doesn't consider herself an influencer, but to post the clothing you wear and links, commission links, and you receive some sort of kickback based on sale, you're a glorified sales associate. You just accept it. Stop trying to pretend that you're something that you're not. And I think that's one of the issues one of the reasons we have an issue with her is the constantly pretending to be somebody or something else. I don't know if you've heard the trailer to her new podcast that just dropped within the last few hours.
I haven't.
But yeah, again, you're getting a different side of Meghan. I think this Meghan that is trying to show you that she's not the Kensington Palace bully. She wants you to forget about all of those stories of her making palace staff cry in cars. She's trying to look like this woman that's elevating other women. I feel like you see a real purpose behind some of the things she's doing today, but that purpose is that change of public perception.
Yeah, absolutely right. And also, isn't it
and the purpose of purpose of the website is to make a buck, though. I want to be real clear.
Well, I was going to say, isn't it a coincidence that she's got inside of the shop and the clothing that she wears is a £1,068 Windsor gown? I wonder how that name came up.
Exactly, because she just refuses to not remind us that for 18 months she was a member of the British royal family. And it's funny that she beats this to death, that she was a member of the royal family, a working member of the royal family. But she was only married to Trevor Ingleson for 18 months too, and she sure has just tried to delete that from the old history.
Yeah, is he the guy that she sent the ring back in the mail? And just cancelled the wedding and didn't actually bother telling him in any other way.
Yeah, she did send him that via FedEx.
Yeah, that's nice, isn't it? What a charmer, absolute charmer. Listen, we're running late today because we had the Leader of the Opposition in, so we're going to leave it there. But Kinsey, great to see you. Thank you very, very much indeed, and lovely to see you this time in the morning. It's coming up to 9:45. Kemi Badenoch was just here talking about wanting to make an amendment in the crime bill to start a national grooming gangs inquiry, basically. So we just want to point out that the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has already announced plans for a nationwide review of grooming gang evidence and the 5 government-backed local inquiries that are already, of course, underway. This is Morning Glory. More after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to 9:49. It's nearly 10 minutes to go until the end of the show. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here, of course, but we thought we'd go out with a bang today. And here he is, Charlie Mullins, the founder of Pimlico Plumbers. He's coming to talk to us because he's been the victim of what can only be described as a plot by the establishment to try and remove his OBE, unbelievably, because they don't like some of his views. Charlie, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Welcome to Morning Glory.
Thank you for having me on here.
Founder of Pimlico Plumbers, a man of great success.
Can we drop the Pimlico Plumbers? That's their history. We're now We Fix.
OK, We Fix
We Fix
now.
London we are
OK.
now.
Well, I wish somebody would.
Eh?
This is broken. I said I wish somebody would fix London, but
Well,
that's
that's
another
what I'm
story.
here for.
Well, you've got plenty to do. Tell us about this, right? You got to know, when did you get the OBE?
I got it, I think it was in 2015.
And was that sort of services to industry and all that kind of thing?
Industry, plumbing, apprentices. Obviously, I've done a lot of charity work, but I didn't get it for charity.
Right.
I got it for proper, like, services.
Services, yeah. So when did you first hear that they were trying to take it off you?
They got on my case in November.
Right. What, sent you a letter or something?
Well, yeah, they sent me a letter from, I think, the Cabinet Office or something, and basically said that I brought the honour system into disrepute or something, and they come up with about 4 or 5 reasons why.
Yeah.
All things evidently that I put on X or 2 bob things I've said.
Yeah.
So my lawyers have been on it. They've been on it all the time. We've waited 4 months, and we got a decision the other day that they now decided that they've got no case against me. They've withdrawn. Basically, they know they're wrong. They're out of order what they're trying to do. They're victimising me, Mike.
Yeah. Do you know how it came to pass? Because I was talking to somebody about this story earlier, and they reckon that somebody would have complained. Somebody doesn't like you or somebody doesn't agree with your politics has complained to these people, and therefore they've done this investigation. So I wonder whether you can find out who that is.
Well, it's obvious who, isn't it?
Is it?
Well, it's politically motivated.
Yes.
I've upset the Labour Party.
Yeah.
He's screaming like a pig, like Starmer, because I said, you know, him, Rayner, Reeves, they're not qualified to be in that job.
Yeah.
They're misleading the public.
Yeah.
They're taking the country to ruins. They're costing youngsters their jobs in fortune.
Yeah.
They're killing old age pensioners with what they're doing. So I've been quite open with it.
I've got no chance then, have I? Because that's what I say every day, pretty much.
Well,
I'm never going to get an OBE
you ain't got
now.
a medal.
No, I haven't got. I'm not going to get one either. The way it's going.
You're not. but on a serious note, Mike, I've had 4 months of it, and it's drove me mad, if I'm being honest. And yeah, I mean, I think where we are today, you know, my lawyers were fairly confident. Cohen, so and so, great lawyers, and they was fairly confident that I'm being victimised.
Yeah.
And
well, it's become about free speech, really, hasn't it? Because it's about what, you know. Why should you not be allowed to say those things and not be punished by having some award taken off you?
I mean, look, you know yourself. Most of the things I said, Mike, was on X.
Yeah.
Right. I think they come up with 5 items. 4 of them was on X.
Yeah.
One, I think I was on a TV programme and talked about you know, a 2 bob reality TV star that's been and gone, Carol Walderman.
Oh, yeah.
I mentioned her.
Yeah.
Right. And
they didn't like it.
I like her. I quite like her.
Yeah.
But
no, but they didn't like it. Is what I'm saying.
Well, they liked it, but there was a few busybodies in viewers that felt it was out of order.
Yeah.
I mean, she was an ambassador for RAF, and I said she's not the right image. A little while later, they booted her out.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's a strange situation that they can even do this. I mean, to me, it sounds a bit like, you know, the whole business of the debanking, you know, where the bank comes to you and says, I don't know if you ever suffered from this, you know, where they go, oh, we don't want you, we don't want your sort around here, so we're going to close your account. That kind of thing. It's the same kind of idea. Thing. It's a free speech issue, isn't it?
It's the same thing, and you've got to remember, it was Keir Starmer that actually brought out free speech and fought for it. And now, as soon as anybody wants to say anything, they want to close you down.
Yeah.
It's total victimisation, and they've been on my case for 4 months.
It must have cost you some money to sort this out with the lawyers as well.
Mike, you know, I sold the company for quite a few quid.
Yeah.
And I will spend every penny possible to prove that they're wrong and I'm right.
Yeah.
And I've already proved it.
Yes.
I've already proved it, if I'm being honest.
And when they said to you that it's all sorted now and they're not going to take it off you, was there any conditions on that? Did they say, as long as you don't say anything else?
Of course. I mean, what they've said is we can revisit this case at any time.
Really?
Well, yes, of course. Revisit any day
That's
you want.
a bit frightening, isn't it? Because it means that they're basically warning you.
Mike.
They're warning you, basically, that you should be careful what you say.
Yeah, that's right. And look, you know, we're all entitled to our opinion.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think I'm going around insulting people in the sense of personal. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm saying is these people are not qualified to do the job.
Yeah.
They're going to destroy the country, and you know, why should we?
Well, you're a
sit back
businessman,
there?
right? Would you trust somebody who's never been in business to run the country's economy, for example, or would you appoint the business secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, who's never been in business either, but he's also pretended he was a solicitor? You know.
Well, yeah, look. I think you've said it yourself already. They're not experienced. They're not qualified for the job. None of them have been in business. The top 3 people who got running the country, Starmer, Rayner, and Reeves. Would I employ them? Is the answer? And the answer's no.
Right.
So why would you allow them to run the country?
Yeah.
You know, I'm fuming about this, but the good news is now I'm over the moon because, you know, they're back down on it. They know they're out of order.
Yeah.
But it's not the end of it, Mike. I mean, I'm seeing my lawyers still, and I want to see where we go from here because I don't think they should be allowed to
Have
do
they
this.
damaged your reputation, would you say?
Of course they have. I mean, it was the, you know, my biggest achievement in my life. Probably 50 years of hard work and all the bits with it, and they want to wipe it off of me all because I don't agree with Khan and I don't agree with them and I don't agree with what's the other pest name, Carol Walderman, right? And it's all nothing. And I told a two-bob joke at the Curry Awards, Indian Curry Awards, and
which they said was racist.
Well,
but you had the Curry
racist.
Awards
2 years ago. But the problem we had there, Mike, was you had that Dr. Ra, or whatever he calls himself, the pest geezer, right? Now, he's a troublemaker, right? He's known as a troublemaker. GBM, whatever they called him, got rid of him. Other radio stations don't want to know him. He's known as a troublemaker. And on that night, I got up and done a joke about, I think it was the World Cup. I was on with David Seaman. We talked about, you know, how the football's going, and I said, you know, why India don't win the World Cup. You know, I won't say it because obviously someone will be on my case. Well, I will say it. It was like, you know, why don't they win the World Cup? Because every time they get a corner, they want to open a shop. It's a 40-year-old joke. Is it racist? Is it a bit of fun? On the night, I had people standing up applauding the joke, right? And I had that busybody pest, like Raj, made a big thing of it, and he sent it into whoever he sends it to. They didn't have white judges. They didn't have enough white dancers. They didn't have enough white people giving out the awards. I mean, not white people, Indian people, sorry. Or they had too many of them. And I think to myself, he'd done a big list, he added mine to it, and since that day, you know, I've had people getting on my case, and, you know, I know loads of Indian people. My girlfriend's a Muslim, right? And, you know, I'm not racist, I can't be, can I?
No. Of course not. No, it doesn't. I mean, but even regardless of whether he was upset by the joke, that doesn't mean they take your OBE away. That's ridiculous. The whole thing's ridiculous.
But majority of people like the joke. And we're talking about World Cup, but putting that to one side, you know, it's a joke. You know what I mean? But the other things have gone about Carol Walderman. I mean, is she really?
Well, she's very unpleasant about an awful lot of people.
Well, to be perfectly honest, after I made my comment and they told me off, only because you had a few of the pests ringing in saying, oh, we don't like what he just said. And then all of a sudden, they've started outing her, you know what I mean? And then the other thing I said is, you know, something about we need to get the Navy in the sea and do the job that we're paying for, protect our waters, right? And
ridiculous.
I said we need to get the army on the street.
Outrageous thing to say.
And protect our people on the street. And then, you know, look, this is politically motivated.
Yeah, of course. Let me ask you a quite final question about national insurance, because your new company, WeFix, is that going to affect you? Have you got a lot of employees there? You've got to pay more national insurance for them?
Unfortunately, yes.
In
it's
April,
going to affect
come
me.
April, how much more money is it going to cost you?
I think it's about £750 to £1,000 a person.
Right.
We're trying to employ as many people as we can because obviously we're a growing company. But there's lots of businesses cutting back. There's lots of businesses not re-employing. But we're going to go for it. But I ain't paying them the extra money, Mike. When the time comes, I'm going to pay the old rate. Let them sue me. Let them make a busybody. And if everybody like me stands up for their company and don't give them the money that they're trying to rob us off, then I think we can put a stop on it.
OK, interesting. Julie Hartley-Brewis here. Very good morning to you.
Very good morning. I mean, you'll definitely end up losing the OBE then if you break the law.
Why? But I'm not breaking the law.
Well, will be. If you have to pay your taxes, you're due to pay. I mean, I don't agree with it. I think it's an insane extra tax on jobs, but you still have to pay
but I'm not breaking the law,
You
am I?
campaign to change the law, not break the law.
Cool, blimey.
I'm old-fashioned.
Well, you're not old-fashioned.
Sometimes part of your campaign to break the law is...
I bet your husband's pleased when you go to work, isn't he?
That's a bit harsh.
God, you could have a row, you can, Julie.
Listen, the point is...
I'm not breaking the law, am I? I'm just saying
not
to
paying your taxes.
Well, yeah, but hang on. Yeah, but if as part of your